Senators Joseph Lieberman and Herbert Kohl chair the proceedings. The two are co-sponsors of a bill that would require video game manufacturers.
Hello! How's it going? Welcome to my stream. Can you hear me? I'm guessing that's a yes. You can hear me? Okay, so this is something I wanted to do since about a week ago. Probably a bit under a week. Like, since they announced the new Night Trap's being remastered and coming out on PlayStation 4, and it made me kind of go back and sort of go through all the Night Trap things, like the old videos and behind the scenes and stuff. There was so much controversy, and it then brought to my attention the US Senate hearings on violent video games. Now, I'd watched this video before, but many years ago. Like, oh man, when did I watch it? I don't know. I found out that, like, because it's like a US Senate thing, they archive all that stuff, and that they had it, you could just freely watch it. And so I went there and looked up, like, Mortal Kombat. Like, I found the one, because, like, I love MK stuff, and I watched it, and God, it made me laugh, because this Senator Lieberman really doesn't know anything about these games, but he goes out of his way to trash them. So, this was all about starting what becomes the ESRB, a ratings board. They were very concerned that the video games were getting too violent, and they had to have a hearing about it. So, for those in the chat, we've got 3 games here. One's Night Trap, which was on the Mega CD, and the 32X later, which is a game that uses full motion video, if you don't know, and there's like 8 rooms, and you go to the rooms, and it's playing a video all the time. So you can watch. You can just look at the driveway camera if you want. You're controlling 8 cameras. And at certain times, they're called augurs, these bad guys come in like that, and they wander through. And the idea is to trap them and stop them from killing the girls who are in the house. Turns out that the house that they've gone to is owned by vampires. And so, pretty much, you're playing the good guys, and you're trying to protect these girls, but everyone in the house is kind of bad. But Lieberman says that the idea is to trap the girls as the player, which is hilarious. And Mortal Kombat, as you guys know, is a fighting game, much like it came after Street Fighter, but it had more violence. You know, when you hit people, blood comes out, and you can do a fatality at the end of the round. And there's that. And then, the last one we had was Lethal Enforcers, which is an arcade shooting game which uses, light guns. And, you shoot at the screen, you shoot the bad guys, and the idea is to not shoot good guys. Because if you do, you get penalized. It literally goes, eh. You get a buzzing sound. Like, if you shoot an innocent person, they go, ah! It's a blood splatter. And it says, innocent victim across their chest. You get the buzzer sound. And then, not only that, when you get to the end of the level, if you kill any innocent people, you get demoted. So if you're like a sergeant, you go back to patrolman. Like, so it was in your best interest not to kill any innocent people. But Lieberman says the idea is to kill innocent people using this handgun called the Justifier. And I'm justifying killing innocent people with my giant blue handgun, Dirty Harry style. So it's quite hilarious. Now, for those guys in the chat, What can you tell me? We got 3 games here, and they're all different genres. What can you tell me about all 3 games? There's something in common. They have one thing in common, these 3 games. One being a fighting game, one's an arcade shooter, and one is like what would you call it? An interactive movie, FMV movie game. But they all have something in common. I'm waiting on the chat. I'm giving you some time. No, it's not the music developer. Each 3 games is made by a different developer, by the way. So, Mortal Kombat was made by Midway. Lethal Enforcers was made by Konami. And Night Trap was made by Sega. So it's not that... that's not the thing that they have in common. If you think about the time, this was like 1993. If you think about the time that these games come out, that should give you a clue. That's a good guess, Edward, but no. Because even like Lethal Enforcers, I don't think that's an adult game at all. I think it's more like a teenage game. I don't think it's very violent. I mean, you're shooting bank robbers, bad guys and stuff. You know, Mortal Kombat, you know, the violence is so comical. Again, I'd say it's more for teenagers. I guess you could say Night Trap is probably the most, I think, even though it's cheesy as fuck. Because it's like an interactive horror movie. Like, and that can be a bit more full on. You got girls screaming while their necks being drilled and stuff. You can't hear me. Can everyone else hear me? There's always someone in the stream that goes, it's not working. You can hear me, okay. So it's just the 420 guy. Oh shit. 429, 420. It's not that they're all based on Van Damme. So the thing that they all have in common is that all 3 games used digitized graphics. So Night Trap used real people digitized into full motion videos. Mortal Kombat used real martial artists digitized into characters. And Lethal Enforcers used real people digitized into, like, you know, dressed up as bad guys and stuff. So that was the only thing that these 3 games had in common, was that they were using digitized actors. So I have watched this video before. And I watched it recently, and I find it really funny, and I thought it'd be fun to stream a live reaction watching this with some people, so you guys can comment too. And I've set up 2 scoreboards, which you can see on the screen now. So the first scoreboard, you'll note, is Sega versus Nintendo, and that's because during this stream, there's a representative. It's hilarious. There's a representative from Nintendo and a representative from Sega there. And every time, like, the Sega guy talks, he finds a way to diss the Nintendo company. And every time the Nintendo guy talks, he finds a way to diss the Sega company. So I thought it'd be fun to keep score on them giving each other shit. And the other scoreboard, which I call the Lieberman attack scoreboard, is when he attacks one of the 3 games. Like, I mean, he's always going to say this is a violent game. That doesn't count. I mean, when he's, like, for example, there's one part in the video where he says, Night Trap, absolute trash, it's garbage. See, that's a diss. So that would be a point. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the points up, and we're going to tally it up. The Lieberman attacks board's probably a bit biased, because I think he really hates Night Trap. So Night Trap is probably going to be the winner. But I won't know, because I haven't tried this. So, that's why I've set this up. So, I thought this would be a bit of fun. I just manually have to add the scores too, by the way. So, I might have to muck around with numbers just so you know while this video is playing. But it should be a lot of fun. So, alright. He's fixed his sound. Great. 420 is back. He can hear me now. Alright, so they're all chiefly responsible for making the ratings board. That's right, but that's obviously not what I was hinting at. Looks like we need friendships back. Why you have to stream when I have school tomorrow? Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I just felt like it was a good time, you know. But you can always watch the archive. Just remember that, because this isn't Twitch. This isn't fucking Twitch. I had a bit of a rant at Twitch last night. I'm like, fuck. I've had it, you know, because I found out, and this is not related to this at all, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sagata Sanshiro is awesome, by the way. But I found out last night that NetherRealm's Twitch account had some special treatment, and the videos never get deleted off that account. And I was always wondering what the fuck, why? Because Twitch said to everybody that videos are only going to last 2 weeks. And, like, I knew it was because they're a big company or something, right? But I tweeted Twitch support. I said, how come their account gets to keep the videos? And they're like, oh, we grandfathered that account before we changed the settings. And I said, well, that's not fair. I said, I've had my account since 2012, and I couldn't apply for a partner because you only offered it as of last year for people in Australia. You know, and they were like, whoa, you know, you can open a support ticket if you want to talk about it further. So shit. And I was just basically saying, if I stream on YouTube, it gets saved. What's the point in streaming on Twitch? You guys delete everything. I said, I want to stream on Twitch. I want to have both, but I don't want to have videos going to Twitch that are only there 2 weeks or 60 days. I think that's shit. They should stay there. Especially since I started a Twitch account back in 2012. But anyway. Yeah, here it's 10:15. So, this video goes for like 2.5 hours or something. So, it's going to be long. And it's a pretty dry video. I'm not going to lie. It's a Senate hearing. And that's why I think it'll be fun to stream, because we can talk in between when it's really dry. But it's really funny, this. So, let's get to it. Let's start the video. I need a drink, but I'll start the video first, and I'll just go quickly grab a drink.
On video game violence and its impact on kids, Senators Joseph Lieberman and Herbert Kohl chaired proceedings. The two are co-sponsors of a bill that would require video game manufacturers to label their products to reveal their violent and sexual content. We'll hear more about the legislation shortly and hear from representatives of Nintendo and Sega. And we'd like to tell you ahead of time that the committee will be viewing some video games from which have been judged to have violent content. We'll hear first from Senator Kohl.
Is there echoing? Wait a second. Hang on a sec. Sorry about the echo. Tell me if this fixes it. No, that's not going to do it, is it? Does that fix it? Can you guys hear? I can't hear now. That's not going to work. I know what's happening. The video's outputting sound. And oh, hang on, wait. Maybe I have to turn this one down. Sorry, I can't test it until I go live, so. How's it now?
This hearing is called to order.
It's too low. How about now?
This hearing is a joint hearing of Senator Lieberman's Governmental Affairs Subcommittee on Government Regulation and Information and my Judiciary Subcommittees on Juvenile Justice. Our subcommittees have jurisdiction over most children's issues and federal commissions. Before I turn the microphone over to Senator Lieberman for his opening statement, I want to make one point. Today is the first day of Hanukkah, and we have already begun the Christmas season.
No worries, Ashton.
It is a time that we
enjoy
think
the
about
archive.
peace on earth and goodwill towards all people, and also about giving gifts to our friends and our loved ones. But it is also a time when we need to take a close, hard look at just what it is that we are actually buying for our kids. And that is why we are holding this hearing on violent video games at this time. That is why we intend to introduce legislation on violent video games as soon as Congress returns. Senator Lieberman.
Thank you very much, Senator Cole. It's a privilege to co-chair this joint hearing with you. As chairman of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Juvenile Justice, you've been out front in protecting our children and frankly, and occasionally protecting the rest of us from minors, particularly in terms of their ability to obtain guns. An amendment on the crime bill, which I was privileged to co-sponsor. Thank you for your leadership on that. Every day, the news brings more and more images of random violence, torture, and sexual aggression right into our living rooms. Just this week, the dreadful story of the young girl abducted from a slumber party in her own home and then found killed. A man on a commuter train begins coldly and methodically to fire away at innocents on their way home, killing 5 people and injuring many others. Violence and violent images permeate more and more aspects of our lives. And I think it's time to draw the line. I know that one place parents want us to draw the line is with violence in video games. The fact is that a new generation of video games crosses that line, containing the most horrible depictions of graphic violence and sex, including particularly violence against women. Like the Grinch who stole Christmas, these violent video games threaten to rob this particular holiday season of a spirit of goodwill.
Hey,
Instead
Thomas.
of enriching a child's mind, these games teach a child to enjoy inflicting torture. For those who have not seen these so-called games before, I want to show you what we're talking about. What you're about to see are scenes from 2 of the most violent new video games. First, we have Mortal Kombat, which is a martial arts contest involving digitized characters. We're going to show 2 versions of the game. In the first segment, which is Sega's version, blood splatters from the contestants' heads. When a player wins, the so-called death sequence begins. The game narrator instructs the player to finish, quote, finish his opponent. The player may then choose a method of murder, ranging from ripping a heart out to pulling off the head of the opponent with spinal cord attached. The second version, made by Nintendo, leaves out the blood and decapitation, but as you will see, it is still a violent game.
He still doesn't like it. He still doesn't like it! Even though it's censored! What a fuckhead! Oh my god. Oh, this is sick. I don't know if I can watch it in front of all these people. This is the best part. They can't get the TV working. This is the best part. I love how he calls it death sequence. The death sequence begins, and you can choose the way you want to murder your opponent. It makes it sound like a list comes up, like decapitation, disembowelment. Like you just pick from the list, and it just does it. I don't know about that, Edward.
I presume that the kids who are playing these games have more success than we this morning at showing them.
Yeah, because we're not fucking idiots. The second game is Night
Trap, which is a game set in a sorority house. The object is to keep hooded men from hanging the young woman from a hook or drilling their necks with a tool designed to drain their blood. Night Trap uses actual actors and achieves an unprecedented level of realism.
Yeah.
What is particularly troubling about the scene in this film that we have an extract of is a graphic depiction of the violence against women with strong overtones of sexual violence. I find this segment deeply offensive and believe that it simply should be taken off the market. Now, these games are just the beginning. These two we've talked about. Every day, new games are appearing on the market. Last Wednesday, in fact, as we were announcing our intention to introduce legislation to create a rating system for video games and to hold this hearing, one video game maker was announcing the release of yet another brutal video game, which is called Lethal Enforcers.
Yeah!
This game encourages players to shoot this gun, which is called a justifier. In other words, this is the handheld implement with which you play the
fuck
game
you
by
up with
shooting
my
it
blue
at
gun.
the screen.
I will
And the
fucking
more
wreck your
successful you are,
day.
the more powerful the gun becomes.
The more powerful a gun becomes?
Is also
What?
making sexually explicit video
That doesn't
games
happen!
available, and there's no way really of effectively keeping these games out of the hands of kids. Next on the horizon are interactive video games, which are going to come right through our TV screens over cable channels. Now, today, just a short while ago, I gathered that some members of the video game industry announced their intention to create a voluntary rating or a warning label system. Are we ready? You want to go with it?
Lowest prices guaranteed.
Okay. I am pleased that the video game business, by this action, has shown that it recognizes that there's a problem here. A credible rating system will help parents determine which games are appropriate for children of different ages, and that is exactly what our proposed legislation contemplates. But I must say here that creating a rating system is, in my opinion, the very least the video game industry can do, not the best they can do. It would be far better
Oh, wait, I didn't
for
see
America's
that.
parents and children if the industry simply
They had, like,
kept
a list.
the worst violence and sex out of their games.
Sex?
Now, I
What's
have
sex?
three major concerns as the industry develops a rating system. First, there are questions about the system itself. Who will do the rating? Will all manufacturers participate? How many age-specific ratings will there be? Will the industry spend money to inform parents about the meanings of the ratings? Second, a rating system must not be perverted into a cynical marketing ploy to attract children to more violent games. A rating system without some industry self-regulation may put us just where we don't want to be. We must not allow the industry to trumpet a violent rating as a selling point. Third, the industry must work to enforce whatever rating system it creates. It should consider licensing agreements and contracts which specify that ratings will be clearly visible in any advertising and understandable by parents and consumers. Distributors, including video rental stores or toy stores, should face some kind of incentives or, in fact, penalties from manufacturers if they sell or rent to children below the minimum ages in the rating.
Hey, kid.
Because of these
Check this
concerns,
out.
Senator Cole and I are
Mortal
certainly going to
Kombat.
proceed with our legislative proposal. Since we believe that our announcing the intention to introduce this bill has helped us get this far, going forward with the legislation is the best insurance that we get as far as we can in resolving this problem. Now, let me stress that a rating system will only be as strong as the weakest link in the distribution system, from manufacturer
The 90s was the
to
best.
advertiser to retailer. And the industry, I think, must make sure that all those links are strong. I want to note here for the record that we contacted several of the biggest toy stores, Toys R Us and KB, among others, I believe Walmart also, to invite them to join us today, but they failed to respond, and I'm disappointed by that decision.
Stick
They
with it,
too
Tribble.
have a responsibility
It gets
to
funny, trust
cooperate
me.
in creating a credible system to keep adult games out of the hands of children. Without their cooperation, no rating or warning label system can work.
Genesis, man.
Even if all of these concerns with a rating system are addressed, the video game industry, in my opinion, will not have done as much as it should do to avoid creating more violence in our already too violent society. The rating system must not be a fig leaf for the industry to hide behind. They must also accept their responsibility to control themselves and
Bleach.
simply stop
That's a bit of an
producing
insult to Bleach.
the worst of this junk. Now, the industry
Junk?
is blessed with some of the most exciting
Junk?
technology existing today. Millions are being spent to gain the interest of our children in that technology. But when they gain that interest, I think the industry also accepts a responsibility. As Bob Keeshan, who was Captain Kangaroo, said last week, the industry has a responsibility to
Captain
nurture
Kangaroo.
healthy children and a healthy society. Or at least, I would add, not to undermine the attempts by parents to nurture healthy children. The video game industry has not lived up to its responsibility to America's parents and children. I hope they will do so in the coming months, at the least by developing a credible and enforceable rating system, and at best by taking the worst games or the worst parts of those games off the market. Bob Keeshan
This is just
made
his
another
intro.
excellent point last week when he said that children don't need violence to be entertained.
That's why it gets better
History
later.
proved that for over
Because
30
he's just
years.
kind of reading this off.
As a
But
father of a 5-year-old,
the
I
rest,
couldn't
he
agree
just starts,
more. But I'm not
he starts getting
naive.
more annoyed at
I
this
know that
shit.
all the public
as it goes
outcry
on.
and congressional interest may not stop the flood of violent video games. For this reason, we need to make sure that parents have the information they need to establish a healthy environment for their kids, and that parents use their power as consumers to convince the video industry to regulate itself. If the violence and sex doesn't come out of the games, parents
Sex?
should be able
What
to keep
sex?
the games out of their homes.
What sex?
Thank you, Senator Cole.
Thank you very much, Senator Lieberman. I'd like to begin by commending you for your leadership in this area. As you know, Senator Lieberman, I have some familiarity with your subcommittee. So when I say that you're doing a great job, I do so from personal experience. I'd like to briefly outline the major issues as I see them. First, with today's announcement that most of the video game industry is committed to a rating system, I believe that we've already changed the terms of the debate. Simply put, we are no longer asking whether violent video games may cause harm to our children, especially to our young children. Clearly they can, or the industry would not be willing to rate its own games so that young kids cannot obtain them. The question now is just what restrictions we need to put in place and who should do it. Not surprisingly, the video game industry believes that self-regulation is best.
These guys are clueless. That's
And
what's
in the best
funny.
of all possible worlds, I
They're
would
so
agree.
funny.
Government intervention should be a last rather than a first resort.
Senile old bastards
In a
talking
sense,
about
then, this hearing
nothing that
represents
they
a
know.
window of opportunity for the video game industry. Under one scenario, the industry can throw us the smallest possible bone and gamble that it can take the wind out of our legislative sails. In my estimation, that would not only be a bad risk, but also an irresponsible position. Under another scenario, the industry can do something more substantial, at the very least creating an independent panel to review the suitability of these games for children
They're all
with the
boring.
purpose of eliminating
But
the
they're
most
funny.
violent games. It is up to the industry then
Oh god.
whether they can be heroes or Grinches.
Grinch
I
is.
spent the
I'd
bulk
rather
of my
be the
adult life in
Grinch.
business, and I know that
The
if
Grinch is
Nintendo
cool.
and Sega, which together control 90% of the market,
90%.
make the development and enforcement of a meaningful
What?
rating system a top priority, then it will
Sega?
happen
No way.
quickly, voluntarily, and without chilling any First Amendment rights.
Did he say Sega and Nintendo?
Second, let me say that I share Senator Lieberman's outrage at the excerpt
Conker's
that
bad fur day.
we will be viewing on the TV. Mortal Kombat and Night Trap are not the kind of gifts that responsible parents give.
Yes,
Night
they
Trap,
are.
which adds a new dimension
They
of
are
violence
fucking so.
specifically targeted against women, is especially repugnant. It ought to be taken off the market entirely. Or
Fuck
at the very
you.
least, the most
Burr.
objectionable scenes should be removed. But those games are only two examples. Let me tell you about another video game called Lethal Enforcers.
Fuck yeah.
It comes with a special piece of hardware,
Oh yeah.
an oversized handgun,
Oversized?
called the Justifier.
It's not oversized. It's
And what
real
does
size.
this game seem to teach our kids? Basically,
But
that a
shooting
gun can
is the
solve
answer.
any problem.
Yes.
With lethal enforcers,
Yes.
sometimes the player hits innocent bystanders.
Well, they shouldn't have
In
been
that
standing
case, blood
there,
splatters to
should
the
they?
ground. But what the heck? Bystanders need to learn to get out of the way.
Exactly. See, he gets
Make
it.
no mistake about it. Lethal enforcers is aimed at young kids.
It
Just
is?
look at the ad.
Okay.
The warning label is almost entirely obscured, but
You don't
enormous
need that.
guns
Don't worry about it.
dominate the package. The ad features more than 20 guns in all. And the lead of the ad says, you won't find a toy like this in any Cracker Jack box.
It's true.
Well, I hope not. For a cynical, irresponsible way to market a product. I find this glorification of kids and guns to be highly
How's that
offensive.
targeted at
It
kids?
comes on the heels
It's
of our
just a
long battle
statement.
to enact the Brady Bill. And less than a month after Senator Lieberman and I passed a bill to take handguns away from minors. At the very least, this game sends a tremendously
Now they-
reckless message
Now they can get
and
plastic
turns any
guns.
effort to discourage youth violence completely on its head.
Oh, it gets so
Third,
good,
we all know
Lee.
that there are many causes of the
It
violence
gets so
that
good.
plagues our cities and increasingly our suburbs and our small towns. Broken families, poor education, easy access to firearms, drugs, the list goes on and on. And
Now
certainly
drugs!
violent video games and TV violence
Shit.
have become a significant
But
part.
you stopped the drug dealers
But
and
we
lethal
cannot become
enforcers.
paralyzed
You
by the
stopped them.
multiplicity of causes or the magnitude of the challenge. We need to make every effort to reduce this culture of carnage, and we need to make that effort now. Because with interactive technology and virtual reality, these games are going to become even more sophisticated and persuasive.
Not.
Experts can debate whether entertainment violence causes brutality in society or merely reflects it, but there should be no dispute that the pervasive images of murder, mutilation, and mayhem
I love how they always
encourages
call
our
it
kids
murder.
to view violent activity as a normal part of life, and that interactive video
It's not
violence
murder.
desensitizes
If a cop
children to
shoots
the real
someone,
thing.
it's not murder.
Our nation's children should not
Unless
be told
they
that
shot
to
them
be
for
a
no
winner,
reason.
you need to be a killer, or that make-believe violence yields real-life success. That subtle but menacing message pollutes our society. If the video game industry cannot effectively police itself, and so far, despite today's announcement, it has not proven that it can, then parents throughout the country will insist that Congress take action. Because while adults can rely on the dictates of the marketplace, obviously our children cannot. So today we're here to learn more
this
about
was the
this issue and
90s.
seek advice and cooperation from all sides. We hope to produce substantive results, and as part of that effort, we hope that we will receive a pledge from the industry to make a real commitment to our kids that exceeds its commitment to the bottom line. We have with us today one of our esteemed colleagues, that's Senator Dorgan. We'd like to call upon him.
Chairman, thank you very much. I'm only going to be able to be at this hearing for an hour, but
I
I'm on,
know. If Grand Theft
Senate
Auto was
Lieberman's
out,
subcommittee,
Jesus.
and I wanted very much to be here because I think this is a very important issue. It has been quite a leap from Pac-Man to Night Trap. Video games and its impact and effect on our children is an important issue, and in many respects, it's the
From
first cousin to the
Pac-Man
issue
to
of
Night
violence
Trap.
on television programming. One of my interests is legislation I've introduced with respect to violence on television, but this is, in my judgment, related to that. Children spend not only a lot of time in front of television sets, but many children spend a lot of time in front of video games, playing video games.
But that's on the television set.
I know we have people
What?
who are critics of
It's
the
the same
bill that
thing.
we've introduced jointly,
It's the
and
same thing,
critics
you
of those
fucking
of us who are
retard.
concerned about
What?
violence on television. These critics are similar, in my judgment, to those who are standing around still counseling us that there's no evidence cigarettes cause cancer. There's no evidence, they say, that violence on television, violence in video games affects our children. Of course it affects our children.
What's a
If we lost all
chemical?
common sense, of course it affects our children.
No, it
And it affects
doesn't.
our kids in a very
Where's your
negative way.
proof?
About 2 months ago, I saw the video game Night Trap for the first time.
Oh, do you like
It
it?
is a sick, disgusting video game, in my judgment. It's an effort to trap and kill women.
I gotta pause the video. Even though Lieberman didn't say it, I think that's a point for Night Trap there. I think we gotta add a point because he said sick, disgusting game. So I think we got to give a point to Sega in the Lieberman box. So let's say anyone on the Senate who takes a shot at one of these games, we add a point. So that's what that's about. So Night Trap's on the board for being a sick, disgusting game. And yeah, let's go back to the video now.
Shame on people that produce that trash. It's child abuse in my judgment.
Trash.
And I know there'll be people who say, well,
it's child abuse.
Police, trying to suggest what people can say.
Adults being killed. Child abuse.
We have some basic responsibility in this country to protect children. Those of us that have children understand that they deserve protection. Certain things are appropriate for them and certain things are not appropriate. And when we see the new generation of video games, and especially Night Trap and several other examples, in my judgment, they've gone too far.
Oh, it's gone so far.
So I want to compliment the two of you on the legislation you've introduced. I think that it's a breath of fresh air. I want to add my name as co-sponsor and join you in your efforts. Someone said, I don't remember the author, that 100 years from now, it won't really matter very much how much your income was or how big your house was. But the world might be a different place because you were important in the life of a child. Maybe, just maybe, this hearing, maybe, just maybe your efforts will be important in the lives of children.
No.
And will make improvements in this world. I hope so.
Wrong.
And I'm pleased to be a part of this hearing. Thank
Wrong.
you.
Thank you very much, Senator Dorgan. We'd like to call our first panel right now. The panel is composed of representatives from academia, education, and also concerned citizens. If you'd like to come up, we'll announce you. Dr. Parker Page is the president of the Children's Television Resource and Education Center. Dr. Page has been a leader on the issue of violence in the media with regard to its effects on children and has addressed the issue of video game violence. Dr. Eugene Provanzo is a professor of education at the University of Miami and author of the book Video Kids, Making Sense of Nintendo. Dr. Robert Chase from Danbury, Connecticut is vice president of the National Education Association and speaks on behalf of millions of educators throughout our country. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Marilyn Droz is the vice president of the National Coalition on Television Violence. She is here in that capacity and as the mother of a teenager. Before we introduce our panelists any further, we'd like to watch the videos. Senator Lieberman.
Yeah, let's watch the videos.
Thank you, Senator Cole.
Finally.
The tapes are ready, which I described before.
Tapes are
begin
ready.
with the two sequences from Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
First is the Sega version. Second,
Sega version,
very
not
brief,
Sega.
but nonetheless illustrative.
Fucking idiot.
Sequence from the Nintendo version. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go, Kano! Yeah! Yeah, take that, bitch!
For a lot of you to see, but there's blood splattering every time.
It's hard for you to see, but there's blood splattering every time. Yeah! Fight! Excellent. Excellent.
Sub-Zero with fatality.
Fatality. He's smiling! He's smiling!
Brief sequence from
He was smiling! Motherfucker! Liar! He was enjoying it! Oh my god, that shit fucking Super Nintendo version. Fuck that. What?
The difference there, as you can see, is that that version does not have the finishing sequence.
Bullshit! You just stopped it! You just stopped the tape!
Red blood spurting out.
He just stopped the tape!
Liquid, but
The difference is it doesn't have the finishing version sequence because we didn't show it.
Sequence.
What the fuck are you talking about? He just didn't show it. What? Yeah! I recognize that scream anywhere. That's Night Trap. Oh, yep. Jump straight to the most violent scene. Awesome. That's fair. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Megan.
Good
This
tension.
isn't gonna work. You're not scaring me. Wait.
Why isn't the guy trapping them? Say, let them get killed. Oh, here comes the bloodsucker. Yeah! Sucker blood! Watch the hose fill up. There he goes. The different possible in score, I know. What? No Lethal Enforcers footage? Oh, that's lazy. It's got the best quotes. They didn't show up because it's all, you dead meat, copper, you missed me, pig.
All right.
It wouldn't support their
Well,
argument that the player's like killing innocent
continue.
people. As opposed to a cop
We'd
shooting
like
bad
to thank
guys.
you all for being here today. In order that we
Are you
can move the hearing
traumatized?
on with reasonable quickness, we'd like to ask you
His face there.
to hold yourself to a 5-minute opening statement and to be pretty careful about maintaining that schedule. We'll include your full statement in the record. And when you've finished your opening statements, then myself and Senator Lieberman, Senator
I was
Dorgan
laughing.
would like to ask you a few questions. Dr. Page, we'd like to start with you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the inception in 1984, the Children's Television
Good
Resource
old
and
84.
Education Center has been dedicated to creating, excuse me, research-based
It's
products and
against the
services that promote children's social development and academic success. During this period, TV violence has been one of our chief concerns. That concern has been supported by 2 comprehensive government reports and more than 3,000 studies on the effects of television. While TV violence remains a significant problem, parents and educators tell us that they are increasingly worried about the effects of violent video games on children. But do their worries merit national attention? After all, in a country which is grappling with an epidemic of real-life violence, should we bother ourselves with kids' leisure time activities like video game playing? We think the answer is yes. For while the impact of violent video games is still open to debate, early studies as well as decades of television research warn us of
Decades
possible consequences,
of television
especially
research.
for young children.
Decades.
The TV research is conclusive. Violent screen images have their own special effects.
Oh,
Children
really?
who watch a steady diet of violent programming increase their chances of becoming more aggressive towards other children, less cooperative and altruistic,
Well, how come
more
I didn't?
tolerant of real-life violence, and more afraid of
How
the
come
world
I didn't
outside their
then?
homes.
Huh?
The case against video game violence is not
I wasn't
nearly so
violent.
clear-cut, for one simple reason.
Your
There hasn't
research
been
is
enough research.
flawed.
In the last 10 years, only a handful of published reports have explored the effects of video games.
Yeah, because there aren't any.
Moreover, the few experimental studies that have been conducted relied on crude, cartoon-like video games produced in the early 80s, archaic by today's standards of technological wizardry. Even so,
Wizardry.
several of the initial
You're
video
a
game
wizard,
studies
Harry.
suggest that there is a link, much like televisions, between the violent video games
No,
and
not sexy
children's aggression.
Flanders.
For example, research studies have found that one, at least in the short
Itchy and
term,
scratchy.
children who play violent video games are significantly more aggressive afterwards than those children who play less violent video games. 2, violent TV programs and video games have similar effects in raising
I think
children's
Lieberman's
subsequent
the
levels
most
of
dry.
aggression. And 3, violent video games can suppress children's inclination towards engaging in pro-social
This guy
behavior.
tries to sound interesting.
All
But
this
Lieberman
research
talks
is
in the
limited
same flat
and
tone.
It's dated. The overall trends,
Which is,
however,
like,
must
boring.
give us cause for concern as we approach virtual reality and video game
Think of the
technology.
children.
Mortal Kombat is simply the first in a new generation of video games that allow software designers to combine high levels of violence with fully digitalized human beings. While these lifelike characters may make the video game more thrilling, the previous TV research sends us a warning. The more realistic the images of violence, the more likely they are to influence young children's attitudes and behaviors.
That's why every time I played MK when I was a kid, afterwards I'd go out and rip someone's head off with a spinal cord
daily
attached.
immersed in video game violence and bombarded by video game advertising. Clearly, all of us, government, the industry, parents, need to create our own action on this side of the video screen. The actions we recommend are as follows. We recommend that the federal government fund independent research projects and disseminate their findings in order to shed additional light on the effects of video games and other emerging interactive media. We recommend that the video game industry, one, provide parents with more accurate and detailed product information than is presently available, and, I'm happy to hear today, establish an industry-wide rating system that's independent of producer pressures. Two, make an industry-wide commitment to advertising strategies and marketing tie-ins that reinforce such a rating system rather than undercut it. Three, pursue a voluntary industry-wide agreement to put a cap on the violence. With the emergence of enhanced human-like graphics, video games that allow young players to participate in heinous acts of cruelty, misogyny, and inhumanity should not be portrayed regardless of profit.
I love the way that every single guy so far has said the object in each game is misogyny
government or industry
against
must still shoulder the major responsibility for guiding their children's entertainment activities.
Oh, God.
We recommend strongly that parents, one, become actively involved in helping their children make video game choices that reflect each family's own values. Two, take seriously the video game rating labels, warnings, or content descriptions that are available. And three, make video game playing truly interactive by setting up time limits, substituting less violent games, and by making game playing a social rather than isolating activity. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I believe that this national attention on video game violence affords us a rare
Mortal
opportunity.
Kombat is very social.
Unlike the enormous
Fight against other
time
people in the
lag between
arcade.
TV violence research findings and
Lethal
public
Enforcers is
awareness,
two-player.
we now have a chance to help lower the impact of video game violence on children's lives sooner rather than later. I hope that all of us, government, parents, researchers, and the video game industry, will seize the moment. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Page, Dr. Provanza.
He's making me tired.
Most adults pay relatively little attention to video games since they're largely the domain of childhood. Although I've been studying toys, games, and the culture of childhood for nearly 20 years, it wasn't until a neighbor came up to me about 3 years ago and asked me what I thought of video games that I began to consider the implications of the games. What I discovered, I eventually described in my book, Video Kids Making Sense of Nintendo. And what I found shocked me. Video games are overwhelmingly violent, sexist, and racist.
Racist?
Some of my more recent research, which I'd like to share with you today,
what game's racist?
Suggests that video games are evolving into a new type of interactive media.
Wait till I get to the racist shit later.
Or interactive
so
television
funny.
is what I'm calling it. Possibly something very close to what Aldous Huxley described in Brave New World as the Feelies. This new CD-ROM-based video game technology represents a major evolutionary step beyond the simple classics, simple graphics of the classic Space Invader arcade games so popular 15 or 20 years ago, or even the tiny animated cartoon figures that we see in the Nintendo system. When you combine this technology, the CD-ROM-based
what
technology,
about
which
fucking
allows
Tom
you
and
to have
Jerry?
these digitized films in a computer, when you combine those with virtual reality technologies like Sega's Activator, which literally allows you to have your movements sensed, punching, hitting, kicking, all translated into the computer, we have something which is a remarkably different and new type of thing. What I want to do in the next few minutes is just make it very clear that we are dealing with something different. a new type of television. I have references in my statement to the extensive studies that have been done on video and television violence, and you can refer to those. As a researcher, I'm absolutely convinced by what's coming out that the long-term effects of television on increasing aggressiveness in children and its carryover into adult life is very, very clearly there. You can cite studies by Joy et al., Hussman, where television's been introduced for the first time into communities that no longer had television. For example, in Canada, where this was done.
Canada? They didn't have
Small isolated community
TV?
that didn't get a
What?
television signal in. What they found, and I won't go into the technical parts of it, but essentially aggressiveness in children increased by 160%.
We even
after
had
they were
TV in
exposed to television.
1959.
Similar types of studies by
How can
Hussman.
Canada not
And
have
I'll
it?
just summarize, I'll give you the
What?
summary statement from some
That
research
makes
done
no
by
sense.
Brandon Centerwall of
Wait,
the University of
it gets
Washington,
so
in
funny,
the
Lee.
Department of Epidemiology
Wait,
and Psychiatry.
wait till
And
later.
he took an
It gets so
epidemiological
funny.
look at television and video violence.
It's just warming up.
And conclude and looked at comparative studies between Canada, the United States, and South Africa, which did not have television until 1975. Centerwall concludes from his research that in the United States and Canada, the introduction of television in the 1950s caused a subsequent doubling of the homicide rate, i.e. long-term childhood exposure to television is a causal factor behind approximately one-half of the homicides committed in the United States.
One half?
Approximately 10,000 homicides annually. He goes on to conclude that while other factors such as poverty,
What?
crime, alcohol, drug abuse, and stress certainly contribute to violence, the epidemiological
Half?
evidence suggests that, quote, if hypothetically television
Half all the
technology had never
deaths
been developed,
in the
there would be
United
10,000
States
fewer homicides
caused
each
by
year in the
video
United
games.
States, 70,000 fewer rapes, and 700,000 fewer injury
Now
assaults.
he's under rape.
Now,
What?
what I'm positing here is that there is a relationship between television violence and the studies there that should be understood in terms
Jesus.
of the new emerging interactive television that these video games represent. Don't think of these strictly as video games anymore. Think of this as a new type of television that is going to emerge into the 90s.
Oh my God, it's so
The
funny.
likely
now.
relationship between violence and television is very important in the
I can't believe these people are
of interactive
senators.
video games for children.
Or were
Where you
senators.
see the real significance of video game technology for contemporary childhood is that it represents the first stages in the creation of a new type of television.
He's from a
An interactive
university, that
medium
explains
as
it.
different from traditional television as television is from radio.
Those people are always
I believe
crazy.
that the remaining years of this decade will see the emergence and definition of this new media form in the same way that the late 1940s and early 1950s saw television emerge as a powerful
I never
social
smoked weed.
and cultural force. Now, if the video game industry is going to provide the foundation for the development of interactive television, then concerned citizens, parents, educators, legislators have cause for considerable concern and alarm. During the past decade, the video game industry has developed games whose social content has been overwhelmingly violent, sexist, and racist, issues that I've addressed extensively in my
Sexist,
research.
racist,
For example,
and
in Video
violent.
Kids, I explored the 47 most popular video games in America.
47.
What I found out
I would
was
love
that
to see that
violence
list.
was the main theme. Of the 47 most popular video games, this is based on Nintendo Power polls, industry polls.
Nintendo
40
Power.
had violence as their main theme.
Where's
Of
the
these 47
racism?
games, 13 included scenarios in which women were kidnapped and had to be rescued, i.e. the idea of women as victims.
Oh my God, he's
This
talking about
represents a
Mario
total of
Brothers.
games, a number which
What
is
the
even more revealing when you take into account
What the
that 11
fuck?
of the 47 games were based on sports
He's
themes
talking
such as
about
car
Mario
racing or
Brothers.
basketball.
Woman being
Women were
kidnapped.
consistently rescued by men in these scenarios, and there's a gender issue operating obviously there, gender bias. And although
Oh
men were
my
often
God.
rescued in games too, they were
Anita
never rescued by
Sarkeesian
women.
1.0.
My point is that video games such as Nintendo have a marked tradition of extreme violence, which is also combined with significant gender discrimination. Now, you've had a chance to see these types of games, and am I out of my time? Okay, let me just summarize quickly then. Please go ahead.
Finish up.
Okay. What it comes down to is that in my testimony, I simply established the fact that the major game industry people are not taking into account their responsibility in this area and that they have a
As
real
soon as he can't go
obligation
off
to
the
do
script,
so.
it's like,
And I'd like to conclude by saying that essentially we are at the threshold of a new generation of interactive video gaming and television. Well, I believe that this technology has wonderful
They
potential.
don't
As an
think, they
educator, I'm
read, that's
perfectly
it.
excited about this type of material or this technology.
Yeah,
We
he
can
only
do
mentions one
extraordinary
game,
things
I
with
know.
it. I'm also convinced that if we continue using it without realizing and addressing the full ramifications and significance of the social content of video games, then we'll be doing ourselves a serious disservice to both our children and our culture.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Mr. Chase.
Senator Cole, Senator Lieberman, Senator Dorgan. I am Bob Chase, Vice President of the National Education Association, which represents 2.1 million education employees in the nation's public elementary, secondary, vocational, and post-secondary schools. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you
the violent
about
glove.
this very serious
You use it
problem,
to punch people.
the problem of the proliferation of
Violent.
corrupting influences
That's
on
what
our
they'd say.
children today. America's children
Communist
are faced with
propaganda.
a bewildering set of messages from television, movies,
They said that
music,
about Tetris.
electronic games,
They
and the print
did.
media.
They said it about
Too
Tetris.
often the most unrelenting assault on the senses, encouraging aggression and irresponsibility, are in direct opposition to the values families hope to instill and the mores our society struggles to preserve. Parents, social scientists, and the community at large share deep trepidation about the
Here's a clip
fruits
from the
of
Wizard.
this ever-widening
Exactly.
dispersal of negative images. The explosion of media in the latter half of this century has made the problem all the more pervasive and the challenges for parents and community leaders all the more difficult. It's not surprising that the first response is to suppress books, movies, or other media that are offensive on the basis of their sexual, violent, racist, or sexist content. Many Americans, in fact, believe we can no longer permit the unfettered production and distribution of media that is contrary to commonly accepted standards of decency. And yet, as history has proven, there will never be a true consensus for a national standard of decency. More importantly, we cannot afford to try to protect our nation by undermining one of the United States' most essential foundation stones, the First Amendment. The NEA has long been a fierce advocate of First Amendment rights. The First Amendment is central to a tradition of academic freedom and free inquiry that is the hallmark of American public education. It is in fact vital to our democracy. And it is essential to the livelihood of our members as educators and America's students as thinkers and communicators. Some may argue that our founding generation never anticipated the denigration of women on television and programs and advertisements when they averred that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. It is reasonable to argue that they never contemplated the need for restrictions on electronic games with intensely violent or graphically sexual content, nor could they, in their wildest imagination, conceive of microchip circuitry, CD-ROM technology, or the leisure time to expend on such idleness. It remains to this generation to sort it out. It is unfortunate that the producers of such electronic games do not exercise restraint. And I join Senator Lieberman in calling for the producers of such electronic games to live up to their responsibility in helping raise a generation of children free from violence. It is even certainly disheartening that there is a demand for games that are explicitly violent and graphically sexual. The first line of defense against wide distribution of such games and other material remains the fact
no such sexual games back in '93.
For themselves
so he's like,
responsibility to raise their children.
You're a fucking liar, Robert Chase.
Standards of respect and decency, and a sense of limits about what is appropriate behavior in our society. The real challenge comes when we begin to determine what our community standards are. My own independence, the legacy and heritage of the American characters, determines that I don't wish anyone, even members of this committee or any other body, to dictate to me what I believe to be appropriate for my daughters to see, or to say, or to do, any more than I would presume to tell you what is appropriate for your sons and daughters. What is fitting, however, and I hope we can share is a commitment to providing parents with appropriate tools to make reasonable judgments for our children. That is precisely what we are here to consider today.
Exactly,
The
Flat
facts
Dave.
in this matter, I believe, are not in dispute. There is a relationship between thought and action. Media that contain violence and inappropriate sexual behavior and bigotry can promote these behaviors in others. Electronic games, because they are active rather than passive, can do more than desensitize impressionable children to violence. They actually encourage violence as the resolution of first resort by rewarding participants for killing one's opponents in the most grisly ways imaginable. Many movies, books, television programs, performances in electronic games are inappropriate for young audiences, and we must assure
Nah,
that
this
the
didn't
guidelines
destroy
that now
MK.
exist
MK
for
was already
films
gory
to serve as a
from the
tool for
arcades.
parents be extended to the electronic games. NEA strongly supports the legislation authored by Senator Lieberman and
Hello.
co-sponsored by Senator Cole to establish a national independent council for entertainment and video devices. We believe this council, working with the video game industry,
Okay, sounds
can and
like
must establish a system of parental notification about graphic, sexual, or violent materials contained in some video
I can
games.
watch
In
it.
addition to providing parents a tool for identifying games that are inappropriate for children, we believe the council can help promote awareness of the
No worries,
relationship
Tribble.
between the depictions of violence and the reality of violence in America today. America's public schools and the members of the National Education Association
They didn't
have
write
long
anything
played a
down. That's
role,
what's
a vital
hilarious.
role in preserving
They
our
wrote-
culture.
They
In
wrote
recent
something.
years, we have worked to establish
to attack
programs
video
to help our
games.
members and schools address the issues
So-
of violence in our society.
They just wrote something that sounded like really nasty
which airs on
to
the
get the
Learning
bill
Channel,
pushed.
focused
have
on
the
issues
ESRB.
of violence and violence prevention in the classroom. This episode has become the most requested of the 30 programs we have produced because of the sincere and grievous problems that our educators are having around this country. We ask all Americans to join
janitorial
us in
stuff.
supporting those lessons learned in schools, to help teachers teach our young people about positive ways of dealing with conflict, and to take steps to learn and wisely choose among entertainment options for their own children. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you today.
Thank you, Ms. Chase. Ms. Droz?
Thank you for the honor of being able to address you gentlemen today. I'm Marilyn Jaros. I'm from Farmington Hills, Michigan. I've been a parent for 16 years, a wife for 20, a teacher in Royal Oak, Michigan for 23,
Oh no,
and a
here we
woman
go.
since the day I was born.
She looks,
And let me
she
tell
already
you, all
looks.
all my labels and all the hats I wear, I find that so extremely offensive, and the only word you can say to the manufacturers and the shareholders of the company is shame on
Wait,
you.
what do you find offensive? Mortal Kombat or
And
Night Trap?
I think that
You didn't
they
say
really
which one.
should stop and think about what they're doing. I mean, how would you like to have a teenage daughter go out on a date with someone who's just watched or played 3 hours of that game?
Newsflash, she has
The word
already
toy
done
comes
that.
from the Scandinavian word little tools. And it's very appropriate because every play is the
I
work
just
of
played
children.
Lethal Enforcers.
And play
Now I'm gonna take
and their
your daughter
toys,
out
it
to
was
the
what
movies.
prepares children for the future. The toys that we have now, the technology that we are getting through the video games
Weird Al.
is
Hey, don't knock
phenomenal.
Weird Al, man.
And certainly it's can have the power to prepare our children for a future that we are not even able to understand ourselves, and a future that's well worth looking forward to. If we can get the industry to change some of the values and some of the levels of violence that are in the games. Children, when computers first came out, computers and video games were played equally among boys and girls in the classroom. There was equal time. Now there's a turn and around where it seems more boys, of course, are comfortable with the technology. Video games are geared for boys.
Who's sexist
We are
now?
losing 50%
It's you!
of our children are losing the value of learning from the interaction techniques and technology. We are now losing another generation of women if we don't start addressing that the video games must address the needs of all children, and the need, of course, being a safe toy.
A safe
Um,
toy.
The girls do want, we're doing some research at NCTV, which is indicating the girls are very offended by the lack of games for them to play with. They feel inferior. The boys and girls are very easy to determine which are
Girls
girl
feel
games,
inferior.
boy games.
Yeah,
Girl games are the
that's
ones with the
bullshit.
fluffy little bunnies. And they're the games the boys choose not to play with. Playing video games has
What?
become a macho boy thing.
What?
Girls are being trained in dressing Barbie dolls,
Trained?
and boys are being trained in technology. This has to change. As a mother,
Bullshit.
as a parent, as a woman, and as an American citizen, I'm stating this needs to be changed. The video industry has done the same thing that the movie industry has done. They have confused children's desire for action with violence. My 23 years of working with children directly have proven to me that children want action, they want excitement.
Working with
They do
children
not need
directly?
to see the insides of people splattered against the wall to
Fire
understand
stairs.
that, you know, they need action, but they do not need to find murder as a form of entertainment.
Yeah, we do.
Teachers by day, parents by nights, we all work so hard to raise our children to learn proper problem solving and to raise them to be good American
I solve
citizens.
problems in Mortal
And all
Kombat.
their actions
The guy's trying to
are
kill me, so I
undermined
kill
by
him.
the
That's
moment they go to
problem
the video
solving.
game and they learn
Lethal
that the only way to
Enforcers.
solve a problem, the quickest,
There's a
most
bank
efficient
robbery,
way
and
to
I
solve
shoot
a
all the
problem
bad guys
is
and solve
kill
the
'em
problem.
And this has to stop. There are very few women characters of any control or power. The self-image that we are giving our girls through the video games is showing.
I'm going to stop it right there. Because I find this funny. Right, what she said right there, she's like, there's very few women who you play as or have control over. Lethal Enforcers, if you look it up, there's 2 players. Player 1's a guy, player 2's a girl. She's your partner. A woman is your partner in Lethal fucking Enforcers. But she doesn't know that because she's a fucking idiot. Anyway, back to the video.
Them that they are, once again, sex objects and victims. They have their choice. The very few women who are of any kind of power are built with iron body parts, or they have the kiss of death. Once again, they can blow the kiss of death. Once again, we got sex and violence mixed in the message. This has to stop.
The kiss of death.
Cigarette.
Okay, I've paused the video. Is that a diss at Mortal Kombat? Is that a diss at Mortal Kombat? I'm going to let you guys decide. Should Mortal Kombat get a point for that? Because girls, they get iron body parts or the kiss of death. Is that a point? I think that's a point. I think that's a point. What do you guys think? Is that a point for MK? Is that a point for MK? Okay, we've got to vote for yes. Can I get someone else to confirm? A point for MK? Mortal Kombat should get all the points. Alright. Let's give Mortal Kombat another point. Oh, a first point, actually. Alright. 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 That's looking good. Okay. Now back to the video. Alright.
Cars, almost everything we purchase nowadays has regulations. Certainly, if we have regulations saying that toys have to be physically safe for children, no one can swallow. The only law protecting our children now is that no moving parts in this video game can be swallowed by someone under the age of 3. Well, I'm finding this violence very difficult to swallow. I see my light, and I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for bringing this issue to the public. You need to be applauded. Thank you.
Well, I'm not.
Thank you very
I'm
much,
not clapping.
Ms. Rose. I'd like to ask each of you if you had the opportunity to talk to the manufacturers who will be sitting here after you leave the witness table. What would you say to them? I'll start with you, Dr. Page.
Well, this is about MK1.
Well, I have, I guess, 2 issues. Well, the first is that I really would like to see the marketing techniques now that this
Exactly.
Proposed rating system
Man-hater.
is going into effect. marketing techniques so
Bitches
that
in
they're
my
not toy and candy tie-ins for games that are designed for kids 13, 14, and 15 years old, but the toy tie-ins will attract children 4, 5, and 6 years old. I think it puts tremendous pressure on parents to buy games that are marketed in that way. Secondly, I think what I would like to see, and I'll echo what Ms. Droz said, I think what kids are attracted to, especially younger children, is action. And I would hope that the industry, with all of the great minds that they have and the creative minds that they have, would put more time and effort into finding creative games that supply action and movement and the glitz that kids love. And
glitz.
at least drop back a little bit, and probably more than a little bit, on the violence that seems to be the mainstay of most of the games at this point.
Dr. Provenzo?
I think there are a couple of things. One is that a lot of people in the industry say that these things simply reflect what's in the culture. I think that by manufacturing games like Night Trap, what in point of fact these manufacturers are doing are endorsing that violence. I think that's really objectionable. I think that there is an obligation, as Mr. Page has said, to develop good games. And
My mum's the same, Vemon.
Confusing violence with entertainment, and to really put the time and effort into developing quality games, which is much harder to do. One of the things about the games is they have remarkably similar scenarios. The game industry is, in point of fact, not developing new games. What they're doing is they're cloning them from one another. There needs to be a major effort to develop quality games.
I was playing Mortal
There are a
Kombat.
whole series of
That's what I
scenarios
was doing.
from game and toy history.
I was
in
playing
order to
Lethal
do that.
Enforcers as well.
Another thing is that parents
And I wanted Night Trap.
need to be provided with
I wanted a
guidelines,
Night Trap.
help in choosing games. Those need to be available in toy stores, in video rental places. In addition, the industry needs to reveal what the games actually are on the covers. They are very, very clever at not giving you a full notion of what the game is about in terms of how they're advertised on the covers and when you walk into the store.
What's it
It's very
supposed to
different when
say?
you see them in the advertising. The kids
A
know what
game
they're
where
about,
you
but
fight.
the parents really don't know what they're about.
You fight everybody
So
to
those would be my
win.
major suggestions.
All right. Mr. Chase?
I
What
think,
would you say to him if you had a chance?
I think it would be a very simple message, and that's responsibility. I understand only too well
Shout out to
the
co-parents.
importance of the profit
Oh,
motive
the
in
video.
business, and applaud that
Terrible.
and appreciate that. However, I think that there are some things that override that, and the continued opportunity for young people to engage in violent activity, and that's what this interactive games do give young people the opportunity to do, in fact, is an irresponsible
Yeah, my pop
act.
said no as well.
And it is very harmul in a
Tape can't
situation
register
where
the
our society
stupidity.
is
The tape's fighting
trying
it.
very,
It's like,
very hard
oh.
to overcome the increasing amount of violence in this country.
It's like acid eating into
Just
the tape.
as a teacher,
The bad
and a teacher
content
leader,
is
I
like
have
tape acid.
the responsibility to educate young people in the best way possible. I think business leaders who produce games and toys or
The video
whatever
isn't
for
accepting the
children
fuckery.
have the responsibility to ensure that those games and toys enhance our society rather than tear it asunder.
Tear it asunder.
Ms. Droz?
I love the
I would
words
ask
they
them
use.
to work together with a panel of people in the outside of the industry, like you gentlemen have suggested. I feel to allow themselves to police themselves when they've already demonstrated they are out of control is like leaving a classroom in charge with the troublemaker. That's not responsible. I feel that we need to have more input from people in the field. Some of the gentlemen on
We
the
should be
panel
leaving the
with.
class unattended in the
I would
first
like them to set up a
place.
rating system that is more accurate.
You're the
rather than
irresponsible
the
one.
pass-fail system, really. That
For
they
walking
have now. Either it's violent, either it's, they just seem to have like basically two categories of games, and it's a pass-fail. I would like to see a rating system that allows parents to truly judge the program. It is easier for a mom to understand the ingredients in a Hostess cupcake than it is to understand what's inside that video game box. And
No,
I'd like
it's
to
not.
get
You
some
just
truth in
don't
labeling
care.
and some more.
That's the
More games,
difference.
and I'd like them to work closely with the educational community. There've been
Why don't you
excellent
actually
teaching
look
children
at the
that
game?
Violence is a problem-solving technique. Now I'd like them to teach children creativity, logic, and other forms of problem solving. They can do it better than
Lethal
anyone.
Enforcers, problem solving. Shoot all the bad guys. Problem solved.
This is an industry that, as I understand, in 1992 made $5.1 billion. I'd like to look at them and say, you are profiting off the American child to an enormous degree. What are you giving back to the American child?
Business.
What are you contributing to the American child? How are you making life
Entertainment
for children in this culture better? And I don't have much evidence of that. Not much evidence of that at all. Where are good games? Where are programs for children based out of your profit?
These are good games.
I think they have a moral obligation there. Maybe they don't perceive that. They're making a huge amount of money. This is very profitable, extraordinarily profitable.
Exactly.
Where is that money going?
To the company. Where do you think it's going? What?
Thank you, Senator Cole, and thanks,
what sort of question's that? They made money.
Shame
on them.
Now, we're also repelled. We're disgusted by this material, and yet it is a measure of
Back to
our values in this society that we resist the impulse to do what I think. Let me say for myself, I'd like to do. I'd like to be able to pass a law saying you can't produce this stuff anymore. We don't do that because we value our freedoms. But with
You'd
those
fucking
rights
try, you
that
fucking
the
bastard.
producers of video games in this case have also come responsibilities, and that's been the partner to rights in our society. And I think what we're all saying is that we don't feel that this particular industry has carried out those responsibilities in the way that they should, and now's the time to change. Dr. Page, I want to ask you, because you spoke about the literature in this area, and just in the interest of fairness, I guess I'd say, is there any, and you have basically summarized the literature that demonstrates that violent TV programming in this case
video games.
Has a link to raising children's subsequent levels of aggression. With regard to the video game industry, there's a much smaller set of experiments or studies that have been done, but it seems to be heading in the same direction. In fairness, I wanted to ask you this. Is there any substantial body of opinion within the profession that argues against those conclusions? Are there
against the conclusions about television or the conclusions about video games?
About violence on television increasing the aggressive behavior of children?
A very, very, very small minority. It's now become a consensus belief that all of the issues that I listed as effects are in fact effects on children.
Okay.
We're an hour in.
And Dr. Provenzo, I take it that you agree with that in your familiarity with the literature, the strong preponderance of opinion is that there is a link here between...
Yes, very definitely. And I think another thing to point out here is that the video game literature, which I've reviewed very carefully from the psychological
video
point of
game
view,
literature,
psychological studies, are all from the early 80s, as you pointed out.
From the
and they're
early
based
80s.
on arcade games, Space Invaders.
Right.
And those are shoot 'em up with, and they're highly depersonalized.
Right.
There are 3 or 4 generations of video games. There's Pong, there's things like Space Invaders, there's Nintendo with cartoon
Pong's
figures.
in Mortal
We're
Kombat.
into the next stage right now, which is Night Trap type games. And there's a new stage after this, which is the combining of this with virtual reality devices. I mean, imagine this game with iPhones that bring sense around.
iPhones?
Digital contact devices.
He said iPhones!
Those types of
How
things.
do you fucking know there's going to be an iPhone?
Sega, to my knowledge,
what the
has got a new wraparound vision screen available right now. At least it's been advertised.
He meant
it's coming out. Maybe they could provide some more information.
He said
about that.
iPhone.
But that's where kids literally physically participate in the violence.
What
you see, the studies that need to be done. We
What
need
the
to redo
fuck,
all the
dude?
classic television studies. Where we observed, how
Illuminati
kids responded
confirmed.
to the violence they saw on television.
Illuminati
We need to
confirmed.
redo all of those things in the context of watching a game like Night Trap. We don't know what the results are, but we can pretty much make some guesses.
Well, this leads me to my next question, which is, it has been my personal reaction, and I'm not a professional in this, that if we have established in this long series of studies a link between TV violence and aggressive behavior by children who watch it, then it should be even more so with video games, because the child is more actively involved in the video game. I mean, he's not just watching, he's making the violence happen. Now, has that been
really?
tested?
Because in Night
yet,
Trap,
or
I'm just watching.
No, it needs. Go ahead.
The only, again, his point is the studies were done in the early 80s. There have been a couple of studies which have found that the kids in the experiments who played the violent video games also had a partner coupled with them who only watched. And what they found was that the effect on both the player and the watcher were very similar, and both of those children were significantly more aggressive after the game playing time. Again, that's only 1 or 2 studies. There really needs to be
1 or 2 studies?
Upwards of 100 or more
What?
studies looking at this issue from all angles.
He even
before
says there should be like 100 studies, but we only did 1 or 2.
Given the similarities of the game playing and the television
What?
watching, I would be amazed if we don't find either similar effects and or effects that are stronger.
I'm struck by the point that Ms. Rose makes
fuck.
about the particular impact on
It's
the
such,
gender
it's
difference
such
here.
a
And
witch
it's in
hunt.
my experience with my kids and other kids that it is true that the I'm curious
feel
as to whether,
sorry for your
whether this
kids.
is true, that boys tend to play these games much more than girls. Young boys tend to play much more than girls. Therefore, when I see the obvious sexual aggression against the woman in Night Trap, which kids do have access to.
Where do you have sex in Night Trap?
I'm worried that
Where?
we're not only perpetuating
It's not
the
existent.
gender stereotypes we talked about in terms of
Just
skills,
because she's
but
in a
we're
nightgown.
running the risk of increasing
Sexual
the
violence.
probability that these
Bullshit.
boys who are playing
Go Gamers are sexy
these
fucker.
games are going to be more sexually aggressive and abusive as a result of the experiences they've had with the games. Now, again, that's a personal, sort of professional reaction. Is there anything in the literature or in your experience, your studies, to suggest that that's true?
There has been studies that have shown
Hey, Silent Hill.
that the more violence a child or a male adult watches, the more likely that they will be insensitive to victims of sexual crimes. There's been enough research out there, I think, to state
Enough research,
in
1 or
fairness,
2
that the
studies.
more violence that a young boy watches at an early age, the less likely they will be sensitive to women's issues. I think if you look at our healthcare cost and see the rising cost of
Healthcare
women being treated in hospitals for domestic violence,
Oh yeah, that comes
I
from
think
video
it
games.
bears truth. And there's enough proof on that right now. It has
That
not
makes no
been-
sense
this
because
is the
you're
first
talking about
generation we
kids,
have right now
and then you're
that
talking about
have a
adults
large mass
in
of
a
young
domestic
boys being
violence
exposed
situation.
to
It makes no
sexual
fucking
violence where
sense.
Not only can they just observe it,
They don't
but
even know
as
what they're saying.
Dr. Provenzo pointed out, they are causing and controlling the movement. So they are getting all the effects of doing the movement except for the actual tactile of skin on skin.
Right. Dr. Provenzo?
Skin on skin.
There's a parallel issue, and I would say it's relevant here in terms of violence against women, which is there is a new field emerging called
We all love
cybersex and dildonics. It's not a joke. And what it amounts
It's
to
not a
is
joke.
pornography
Cybersex.
being placed on CD-ROM technology.
On
And essentially what it
CD-ROM.
comes down to is you can
Not
dial
video
up
games though.
what you want in terms of a blonde or redheaded brunette, male or female.
Fuck
dress
yeah.
the person up, get them to do various
Fuck
things
yeah.
you want them to do. Now,
I gotta
my
get that
concern with
CD-ROM.
that is either if it's I'm not sure if it's possible to have more
That
benign
one needs
forms
a
of that.
dildo in it.
But if that stuff gets into the hand, imagine that getting into the hands of a 13 or 14-year-old who's had no sexual experience or encounters.
Oh, I know what'll
and
happen.
They work on those models in the video game context or in the computer context for 3 or 4 years, and then they finally meet, a real woman on a date. I would not want to date that kid, frankly.
Why?
I mean, that's very scary.
What
And
the
I think
fuck
some
is
of the
this
stuff
guy
in terms of
saying?
The type of thing you're saying here. I mean,
What
look
are
at
you
the portrayal of the
saying?
video and the image from Night Trap.
What the
I mean, there are obviously sexual overtones operating there to a large degree.
What if a kid got his hands on a porno and he was 14 and then went on a date? I wouldn't want
daughters going out
my
with
daughter going out
a
with
boy who's just been playing one of these video games. Part of this whole
Jesus.
part of the outrage here and the anger and the frustration, of course, is just what you testified to, which is that parents increasingly feel that they're losing the battle
Oh God.
for their children to other forces in our society, and this is part of it.
Welcome back. Mortal Kombat got a point.
One is, I just want to make it clear, and I know it is, it just hasn't come up in this hearing today, and that is that there are a number of major and primary causes for human aggression and for violence in kids. And video games and TV violence may or may not be part of it for any one child or group of children. But having said that, I want to mention a second thing because it's come up in the recent debate, national debate about violent video games. There are some folks who believe that violent video games can drain away aggression. That after kids play a violent video game, they in fact will have a cathartic effect
Here we go.
and will be less violent.
Let's see what it says.
That's a great theory, and it makes for very
it's a
lousy
theory.
research. The research,
Lousy
especially in the area of TV violence, points in the exact opposite direction. So
where they've
kids
confirmed
after
that it's
playing a
true
video
now.
game may or may not feel more relaxed, may or may not feel less frustrated, may or may not
I love LA
feel
Noire.
better about themselves. But the research indicates, both from TV and from the early studies on video games, that they're not going to be any less aggressive, that their attitudes about aggression will not have changed or decreased. In fact, they probably, if anything, will have increased. And I think that point needs to be
Really?
made.
Dr. Provenza, you indicated that in your book, and I know you have
Is
in
that
your
why
book, state
I was
that
never
video
violent?
games are not only violent and
Playing games.
sexist, but they're also racist. Can you just briefly
Racist.
give us a few examples of what you mean?
Yeah, okay.
In interviews with children,
Oh, this has got to be good.
what I found was that they talked about the ninjas as being bad. And you asked them who the ninjas were, and they were sort of like the Japs and the Chinese. And it turns out that they perceive Asians,
The ninjas are
any Asian,
bad.
as being
The
extremely
ninjas
violent,
are fucking bad.
as being dangerous, as being evil. It's operating.
How
at
do
a
you know
very
it's a
basic
Jap
level, and
ninja?
sometimes simplistic. It carries over into other areas.
What
as
about
well. There
American
is
ninja?
depictions, I believe, although it's hard to prove, but my perception of homophobia operating.
Homophobia?
Certain types of women are portrayed. I think that there are also things about race in terms of black and color issues that are clearly there. They're subtle and they're hard to get at sometimes, but I think they're
subtle?
a rather disturbing world.
Non-existent, you mean?
About the gender issue, which is following up on what Ms. Strauss was saying.
I know, he's a racist.
There's another issue that I found in my research that I think is very important.
He's the one who said Japs.
And that is that I interviewed children, girls in particular, large numbers of them, and they basically said, I don't like video games. I don't like computers. I think I would like them, but I don't like what they're about, is what they said essentially. And you could, I mean, I would have third graders say, what are some good games I can play? Yeah. Now, my argument here would be simply, if it's important as you're arguing, which I think is
Mortal
critical,
Kombat,
that
Lethal
video
Enforcers,
games, and as the industry people often argue, that video games are the first introduction for children into the culture of computing, then we're discriminating against girls by providing them with these consistent negative images because they get turned off to computers at a very early stage. And if those are really, if these are tools
they get turned
for
off
the 21st century,
because you say so,
that they need to master, we're driving them away from these tools, and I think that's very objectionable.
My time's up. Thank you all.
That's so bullshit.
Thank you very much.
In school, I use computers with girls all the time.
We have
That's so
testimony that will be
fucking
submitted
bullshit.
later, some of which has already been submitted by Mr. Tom Zito, who's
The
now with
ninjas
us,
are bad.
President and CEO.
The ninjas are bad.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Zito is here. I see. Okay, Mr. Zito has presented testimony. Mr.
All right, I have to pause that. Sorry, I was talking. That came up in a It's talking about Mr. Zito. Mr. Zito is the guy behind Night Trap. And what happened was, in behind the scenes, he said that they invited him out there, and then the guy said he's not even here today. And then he yelled out from the audience, "No, I am actually here." And then he went, "Oh, okay, he's here." But they didn't want him to talk because they hated, out of the 3 games that they're talking about in this video, they hated Night Trap the most. And they wouldn't let the guy even get up to defend the accusations they were making against the game. And that's why they were like, "No, he's not even here." And then he's like, "Actually, I am." And he's like, "Oh, okay, he's here." But they didn't let him talk at all because they wanted to go on a full-on witch hunt on these games. So I'd rewind, but I'm playing the video in the Twitch thing, and the controls aren't. It's not. I don't have good control over the video, so it's pretty much pause, play sort of thing.
Zito says that Night Trap was set out to create a spoof of vampire films.
That's right.
And then Mr. White from Sega, Vice President of Sega, who will testify in the next panel,
Oh yeah,
says
looking forward to that.
in 5 mitigating points responding to the controversy over Night Trap is that the controversial scene, apparently the one we've just seen and the one I've seen before, is displayed only when the game player loses. Does that make you feel any better?
Oh, it makes me feel a lot better that if you're a loser, you're dead. No, it doesn't. We're dealing with self-esteem in here. There are many magazines out on the market.
What was it that Kim said?
Like
She needs a
several I
dildo
brought
in her
today.
twat.
These magazines are filled with game tips on how to play the game.
That's right.
That in no time at
So you
all
won't
children
lose.
become winners in kill, and their kill ratio goes up. It tells them the
No.
secret codes and exactly what to do.
What are you talking about?
to
If
become
you win, you
successful
don't
in
kill.
Murder. My statement to people who feel that there are some value to these
Are
games
you
is if the
fucked in the head,
Pentagon
lady?
was to
I
ever
think
have
so.
suggested years ago that we put video games that teach children how to aim guns and train them at the age
See ya,
of
Kevin.
8 to be soldiers and to and ever invented a game to put into the homes of young boys to train them to be in the
Train
military.
them
I can't
in
begin
the
to tell you.
military.
You know what kind of uproar there would be in this country if our government was to start training early killers.
Lethal enforcers. Man,
Commander
I'm
Sims at the
so
beginning
good
of
with
Night
the
Traps
gun
looks at you straight in the eye and he says,
that I could
quote,
be in the military.
if you don't have the brains or guts for this mission, then give control to someone who does.
Exactly.
That's what it says at the beginning of the game. The head of the SWAT team, or excuse me,
SWAT
it's the
team.
SCAT.
The
It's
SCAT.
The Sega
Control
something or
attack
other,
team.
You know, SWAT
You
team.
fucking
is what it
idiot.
comes
You don't
down
even
to.
know what SCAT
So there's
stands
this
for.
sort of fascist military type with a police cap on, looking at you and saying, "You're not
Police
man
cap.
enough to do this. Forget it. You know, you don't deserve to play this game."
Exactly.
Obviously, it's not directed for the other half of the population.
Oh, so it's racist. Really? Oh, sorry, sexist. Really?
Mr. Zito,
Really?
in his testimony, also says the only thing worse than a violent video game is the even more frightening suggestion of censorship. I understand his concern about censorship, and I guess since
What a quote.
in the 13 years that I've served here in the United States Congress, that you will not find a congressional
fuck with
record
our
that
eye.
I've left that represents a belief in censorship. I think censoring what people can say or see or do or think is a trail that's a long, tortured, dangerous trail. On the other hand, the interest in creating, with new technology, interactive video games for the entertainment of adults, and the difficulty in
The ninjas are
dealing
bad.
with
The ninjas are bad.
those kinds of games and the access to those games by children is something that we cannot ignore.
Oh, God.
Senator Lieberman has a young daughter. I have young children.
That
The
guy's
fact is,
annoying.
games,
Bearded
video
beard
games
bastard.
are an exploding industry in this country. What I see on some of these video games is exactly what I've seen on television. An incredible sensationalist approach to glamorizing violence, going more and more towards the edge, a collapsing of values, and I worry about it. I don't know exactly what the solution is.
Towards the
but I know
non-existent
that,
edge.
To those who produce Night Trap, my personal observation is I think it's pathetic and shameful
Oh!
that the conclusion of a game like that, a quote game unquote, is to drill into a woman's neck, to grab a woman with a metal hook. I mean, I don't view that as constructive entertainment. Now,
Oh my God! You don't even do that in the game. The augurs do it. But that was clearly a diss at Night Trap, so we're gonna have to add a point. Let's see. Let's bring in the two. Let's line that up for a sec. There we go. Clearly that is not the same size image. We're going to put that up here though. I've got to get rid of that first one. I think it's that one. That's the one. Alright. Okay. Alright. They're not perfectly in line, but that'll do. Whatever. Okay.
Should we censor it? I don't believe much in censorship, but moving down the road to try to find how do we prevent children from having access to that sort of glorification of violence, and I agree with Senator Lieberman.
Lethal Enforcers needs to get a point.
I think that is directed all too often against women. I think that the search for that answer is a constructive search for all of us, and this panel, I think, has presented some extraordinarily thoughtful testimony for which I'm grateful.
Senator Cole, if I may just ask one final question, just to pick up on something you said so I'm clear in understanding it, because it goes directly to the announcement by the industry today. When we're talking about a rating system, did I clearly understand you to say earlier that we ought not to be content just with the MA-17 or MA-13, but that we ought to require that there be a narrative describing, for instance, saying that this, assuming we can't
like not appropriate for minors.
Doing it. This Mortal Kombat, this game includes scenes of decapitation, etc., etc. Night Trap, there's violence against a woman in this. Is that what you're suggesting?
Violence against a woman.
Something more than parental discretion advised. That variation on the theme. I actually applaud Sagan's beginning the process of having a rating system. I simply would like to see a more detailed rating system that gives parents who have the ultimate obligation in this area for younger children more information so they can make a studied judgment.
Senator,
Yes.
the NCTV had a rating scale back in 1989 to measure video games. We're currently in the process right now of revising where there would be a range of violence that you can play, from the very lowest, of course, always being don't put the game in the cartridge, but to how many acts of violence that can be done in 1 minute. You know, we have always monitored television, and we do acts of violence per hour. When we monitor video games, we go down to acts of violence per minute.
Acts of violence per minute.
And I would like to see the rating scale be a system where it would measure the amount of sexual references or sexual activities that can be done, and the act of violence. Senator Dorgan is familiar with our work, and he knows that we take a strong stand against censorship. We're strong.
No, I didn't hear about Darksiders 3.
Constitution, but
sweet.
Everything that touches children, from the pajamas they wear to the toothbrush that they use at night, is governed by regulation.
I never had a Mortal Kombat toothbrush.
Are concerned with their physical safety.
I never had a Night Trap toothbrush. I would have though if I'd seen that shit.
Safety.
I would have bought it.
And let's also look at the safety of the child who's sitting next to the child whose parents are unable or unwilling to keep night riders out of their home.
Night riders?
What? I'd like to make a suggestion that I don't think is that difficult to do. I'd like to see violence portrayed accurately.
Oh my god.
I would like to see in television violence,
this guy's so
when someone is shot in the leg, someone isn't winged, but what really happens to them. I would like to see in a video game that if you punch someone viciously, they don't get up and walk away immediately and take another punch. I think the kids do not understand. When I interview children, I spend a lot of time out in the field interviewing kids, and they don't understand what guns and hitting does. And I think they need to understand that, and they don't get that communicated to them through either television or videos at all.
And I was a dumb kid.
Guns aren't that serious. They don't understand that guns kill people, or that when a gun goes through your leg, you may not walk again, or you may lose your leg because your leg may explode. They don't understand any of that.
No, they don't understand nothing, man. If they don't understand how they're affected by it, then what you're saying makes no fucking sense.
An attempt to defuse or to take the wind out of the sail of any potential congressional action.
I personally think that the parents of the United States, thanks to some of the effort on people on the panel, and definitely the attention that Senator Lieberman gave last week, and the building anger of parents regarding the violence that our children are exposed to has reached such a momentum
I
in this
know,
country
Professor Fuckwit more
that
like it.
I don't think the American people will allow the video industry to put up a smoke screen. And after talking to some of the people
Professor
in the
of
industry today,
ignorance.
I do feel that they are sincere. And
Man, I had so many
after
guns when I was a kid. I had
23
cap
years of
guns,
working with
water
kids, it's kinda hard
guns,
to lie to me.
light guns.
And I'm really hoping that they will work
I loved
together
guns as a
with
kid.
people who have been working with children from, and let's work and solve this problem. There is potential here. We have to tap into it.
I think we should view it as a positive step, whatever the motivation, and I certainly wouldn't want to give anything as far as whatever that motivation may be. It's a positive step to doing what's necessary to protect our children and to do what's right.
Very good. We thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Before we go to the second panel, I'd like to simply say that Senators McCain and Gordon have filed statements that will appear on the record with this committee. Senator Lieberman.
Is this a new panel? Sick.
Thank you, Senator Cole. Let me, and thank the members of the first panel. Let me now call the second panel to the table.
Oh, yeah.
Howard Lincoln, Senior Vice President of Nintendo
This is where it gets
of
good.
America. Bill White, Senior Vice President of Sega of America. Eileen Rosenthal, who is the General Counsel of the Software Publishers Association. Dawn Wiener, President of the Video Software Dealers Association.
I believe it is still a thing,
Craig
Edward.
Johnson, who is the past
Because it was never, like, lifted.
of the Amusement and Music
So,
Operators
still exists.
Association.
But they haven't censored home versions of Mortal Kombat. But I believe that ban is
thank,
still effective on arcades.
All of you for coming here, and we look forward to your testimony.
Oh, this is
now
the best part.
We're having technical difficulties with the lighting system. The green light is not working. There'll be, I guess, a yellow light flashing.
The
when you're
TV
heading to
doesn't
the end of
work.
your
The light
5
doesn't
minutes,
work.
and-
Maybe if you'd played some fucking video
Okay, we're
games,
actually
this
gonna try to
shit would
change the
work.
bulbs here there's a joke here somewhere, but
Huh.
we'll decide on it later.
A joke, mate. There's been
Mr.
so
Lincoln,
many
why
jokes.
don't you begin?
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cole, Senator Lieberman, Senator Dorgan. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you to discuss this issue.
I
of
think he's the
violence in
Nintendo
video
guy.
games. Nintendo is just as concerned about the
That's
issue
Nintendo.
of violence, whether in movies, television, or video games, as anyone in this room. Of course, every entertainment executive
Getting
tells
ready
Congress that,
to add a point.
but Nintendo can back it up. In the mid-1980s, when Nintendo entered the video game business in this country, the issue of violence in video games was not in the public's eye. But just like today, there was a computer software industry selling video games, and some of these games contained excessive violence and pornographic material.
What? Liar.
We didn't want Nintendo's name associated with this kind of product. Even
Liar.
then, we were concerned about game content. So in 1985, when we launched our first Nintendo home video game system, we made a conscious business decision
Can you
not
imagine?
to allow
Oh, yeah.
excessively violent,
can you-
sexually explicit, or other offensive games in our
Can
system.
you imagine pornographic
We
games on the
incorporated
NES?
a patented
All the
security
blocks?
chip in all Nintendo hardware and software, and this enabled us to review and approve the content of all video games
What?
played on Nintendo's hardware, either video games sold directly by Nintendo or games marketed by our approximately 70 independent third-party licensee companies. Nintendo has video game guidelines which control game content, and we've applied these to every one of the more than 1,200 games released into the marketplace by Nintendo and its licensees. Using these guidelines, we prohibit a number of
Custis
things,
Van,
including
yeah.
sexually suggestive or
Atari.
explicit content, random, gratuitous, or excessive violence, graphic illustration of death, excessive force in sports games, ethnic, racial, religious, nationalistic, or sexual stereotypes,
Nationalistic?
profanity or
Racist?
obscenity, or the use of illegal drugs.
Profanity?
And
Drugs?
over the last
Violence?
8 years, these guidelines have kept an enormous amount of offensive material, including excessive violence, out of American homes. and specific examples are contained in the statement that I've submitted to you. Of course, our game guidelines are not perfect and may not answer everyone's concerns. After all, video games are a form of entertainment covering everything from education to the martial arts. But I must say that we have made a good faith effort to keep offensive material off our game systems, and we intend to continue applying our game guidelines in the future. In the past year, some very violent and offensive games have reached the market. And of course, I'm speaking about Mortal Kombat and Night Trap. And let me say that for the record, I want to state that Night Trap will never appear on a Nintendo system. Obviously, it would not pass our guidelines. This game...
That's shots fired. That's 1 point for Nintendo. For sure. Because I knew it wouldn't take them long to have attack Sega. Oh, we'd never release that game on our system, even though they released Lethal Enforcers on it later. So that's 1 point for Nintendo. All right. So let's go back to the video.
Which, as you've indicated, promotes violence against women, simply has no place in our society. Let me turn to Mortal Kombat. To meet our game guidelines, we insisted that one of our largest licensees, Acclaim Entertainment, remove the blood and death sequences present in the arcade version of Mortal Kombat before we would approve this game. We did this knowing that our competitor would leave these scenes in, and with full knowledge that we would make more money if we included the offensive material. We knew that we would lose money by sanitizing Mortal Kombat, but sanitize it we did. And unfortunately, I must say that we have been criticized by literally thousands of young game players for insisting that the death sequences be removed from this game.
What's been the form of that criticism?
They get another point because I had another shot at Sega.
Literally thousands of phone calls.
Those people actually call and write to complain that they can't have the more violent game on the Nintendo system.
That's correct. The letters and the phone calls essentially say, leave in the violence. You're censoring.
Exactly, you are.
Now, we share Congress's and the public's growing concern with violence.
It's
and as a worldwide video game industry leader, Nintendo, of course, will do everything it can, working with you and your staffs and with all of the other companies in our industry, to develop a workable
1 year later,
system.
MK2 says with full blood.
A rating system is no substitute for corporate responsibility. Rating games will not make them less violent. Only manufacturers
they lost so much money.
Can do that by controlling game content and keeping outrageous games like Night Trap off the market. We agree with your recommendation that a game rating system is needed. To be effective, it has to be comprehensive, uniform, and understandable. And of course, it has to have broad industry and public participation in its formulation.
We took it out.
And it has to have credibility. A
That's
self-administered
fucked up.
rating system is confusing.
Who says
probably
that?
Does more harm than
How
good.
could you know?
In conclusion, regardless of what happens here in Congress, Nintendo will sponsor industry forums in early 1994 to discuss game content guidelines and work out a comprehensive game rating system. And to advance that cause, Nintendo will work with entertainment software publishers, game developers, hardware manufacturers, retailers, consumer advocacy groups, and other interested third parties to assemble the first industry-wide forum on these subjects. And certainly we invite you and your staff to attend. But really, in the end, the real issue here is not about game ratings.
It's about money.
It's about exercising corporate responsibility.
No, it's not.
It's
about
we've
money.
Gotten into this business, and we're going to continue to do it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. Mr. White, you're next.
He took 2 shots at
Chairman Cole and
Sega.
Senator Dorgan. My name is William White.
I like
I'm
this
Vice
guy.
President of Marketing and Communications for Sega of America.
I like
and
this
father
guy a
of
lot.
2 boys, aged 5 and 8.
Good on you,
Sega of
mate.
America is headquartered in Redwood City,
Sega,
California,
I
and we
salute
develop
you.
70% of our games here in the United States.
Yeah.
Since mounting a serious challenge to Nintendo's monopoly over the video game market in 1991, we have won nearly half of the total U.S. video game market. I'm pleased to present Sega's views on how we can best ensure that all consumers, especially parents, have the information they need to make appropriate choices among interactive video products for their family, be it a single-person household or a household where children reside. I want to address 3 key points. First, the fallacy that Sega and the rest of the digital interactive media industry only sell games to children. In fact, our consumer base is much broader.
Oh, really?
Second, efforts Sega has already made to provide parents with the information they need to distinguish between interactive media products which are appropriate for young people and those which are not. And third, efforts Sega is currently undertaking to gain the cooperation of all digital interactive media companies to develop an industry-wide rating system. In recent days, the glare of the media spotlight on this issue has resulted in the circulation of a number of distorted and inaccurate claims.
Exactly.
The most damaging of these distortions, in my view, is the notion that Sega and the rest of the digital interactive industry are only in the business of selling games to children.
Exactly.
This is not the case. Yes, many of Sega's interactive video titles are intended and purchased for young children. Many other Sega titles, however, are intended for and purchased by adults for their personal entertainment and
Sometimes,
education.
Kim.
The average Sega CD user is almost 22 years old, and
He
only
gets
5% are under the age of 13.
He gets it!
The average Sega
That's why I
Genesis
like this
user is
guy.
almost 19 years old, and fewer than 30% are under age 13.
He
There
knew.
truly is something for everyone in our software catalog, and the variety of available software is multiplying each day. Interactive media should be treated no differently than television, motion picture,
Exactly.
recording, music, or publishing industries. Attempts to relegate digital interactive software to a media backwater are outdated and we believe inappropriate. It makes no more sense to conclude today that digital interactive media is only for children than it would have when Gutenberg's press was in its infancy to conclude that the printed word was only for Bible readers. Digital interactive media will communicate increasingly diverse
White.
information to an increasingly
You're great.
diverse audience. In fact, it has already began. Looking at our most recent data for 1993, action-adventure titles such as Sonic Spinball and Jurassic Park account for 40% of the revenue from our library.
There you go.
Sports titles such as NBA Action 94,
NBA
World
Action
Series
94.
Baseball, and Joe Montana Football account for 35% of revenues. Fighting games such as X-Men and Eternal Champions comprise 13% of revenues. Titles in the children and entertainment categories such as Barney and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and Fun and Games produce 5% of our revenues. Role-playing games such as Landstalker make up 5% of revenue. And strategy and puzzle games such as Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine constitute 2% of revenues.
2%.
As you can see, evolving interactive
Good
technology
numbers.
has spawned a huge market that goes well beyond the child-oriented directed titles that gave the industry its start.
They
Clearly,
mentioned Street
whatever
Fighter later.
Congress might do would affect a large,
They do.
diverse group
They
of
start showing
consumers,
pictures and shit.
young and old, in a volatile industry only in its infancy. Information, not regulation, is the appropriate policy. Last week, Bob Keeshan, who I knew as Captain Kangaroo growing up, said this, quote, "When all is said, it is the parent or guardian who must be the final arbiter of what is appropriate for a child. Give parents the information
That's
needed
right.
to make an intelligent, informed decision." We agree. Last September, Sega completed its phased implementation of a comprehensive parental guidance program, which we began developing over a year and a half ago. The Sega program
Before
is a
Mortal Kombat.
three-pronged approach designed to help parents determine the age appropriateness of different interactive video software. It includes a rating classification system, a toll-free hotline, and an informational brochure. Building on the motion picture industry model, the Sega rating system applies one of 3 classifications to each interactive program released by Sega. GA for general audiences, MA13 for mature audiences age 13 and over, and MA17, adult appropriate, not suitable for those under 17. We established a toll-free hotline, staffed more than 70 hours a week by professionals who can supplement the rating classification by informing parents about the specific content of each title. The Everyone Wins brochure, written by Scholastic Inc., the nation's leading educational publishing company, has helped to publicize and explain the new rating system. Sega's rating system has been carried out by the Video Game Rating Council, created by Sega and consisting of independent
VRC.
experts
That's what it says here.
in the areas of child psychology,
Rated by the VRC.
sociology, cinema, and education.
Mature audiences.
The council is responsible for evaluating each game and designating it with the appropriate rating classification. I want to emphasize that this is an independent council. Even though it takes considerable time to evaluate each product, individual council members are paid only a small honorarium for each game they rate. And now, we and others in this industry are prepared to take the next step. This morning, a number of interactive video companies and some of the nation's leading retailers announced their plan for creating the type of industry-wide rating system you have called for. The coalition committed to this effort includes Atari, 3DO, Walmart, Sears, Toys R Us, and Blockbuster Video, and the video game software publishers representing over 90% of the Sega video game market. Sega was a catalyst in producing this collaborative effort, and we hope that our rating system will serve as a model for the larger industry approach. The Software Publishers Association, the Video Software Dealers Association, and the Children's Advertising Review Unit of the Better Business Bureau have also pledged to provide leadership in this process.
Are you sure about that, Gohan?
The goal of the industry coalition is to develop and implement a rating system that enjoys widespread acceptance and voluntary participation throughout the industry at all levels of product distribution, is uniform and consistent, has a high degree of consumer awareness and understanding, and has the cooperation of retailers to enforce the program at point of sale. Chairman Lieberman and Chairman Cole, I would like to extend an invitation to you and to your staff to join the industry coalition when it meets for its first working session at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in early January. Your leadership and guidance will undoubtedly improve the process we are engaging upon and will help us establish a meaningful and effective rating system. There is every reason to be optimistic about the industry's ability to voluntarily provide parental guidance. But we ask that you treat digital interactive media as you have treated other media, such as the motion picture industry. Give parents the power to choose what's right for their kids, but don't tell adults what's right for them. Sega of America looks forward to continuing to work with this panel, other leaders in Congress.
I've got the American
and every
cartridge for
responsible member of
MK1.
the
We'll check
industry
later.
to better inform parents about the age appropriateness and
I don't have
content of all
MK2
interactive
through
media
there.
products. Thank you for the opportunity to share Sega's views. I look forward to your questions.
This guy was
Mr. White.
very
Ms.
level-headed.
Rosenthal, representing the Software Publishers Association.
Thank you. Chairman Lieberman, Chairman Cole, Senator Dorgan, thank you for the opportunity to appear today to discuss the creation of a uniform rating or labeling standard for video and computer interactive games. My name is Eileen Rosenthal, and I'm the General Counsel of the Software Publishers Association. More importantly, Senator Lieberman, I am by birth and at heart a native from the great state of Connecticut. The Software Publishers Association is the principal trade association of the personal computer software industry.
Whatever.
SPA has a membership of over 1,000 companies and represents 90% of the personal computer software sold worldwide. Its members range from such well-known companies as Adobe, Apple, Broderbund Computer Associates, Davidson and Associates, IBM, 3DO Company, Knowledge Adventure, Sega, Philips Interactive Media of America, Time Warner Electronic Publishing, Sony Electronic Publishing, Pioneer New Media Technologies, Interplay Productions, Novell, and Symantec, to hundreds of smaller companies, all of which develop and market consumer, business, and education software. SPA members sold more than $30 billion of packaged software in 1992. Mr. Chairman, I ask that my written statement be entered into the record. Today, I would like to make the following 3 points. First, on behalf of the SPA, I would like to commend you, Chairman Lieberman, Chairman Cole, and members of the committees, for the work that you have done to address the problems of youth violence in our society. Our culture is inundated with violent and sexual content that is constantly being broadcast to our youth through television, movies, radios, and books. As the video game industry has grown, we are finding that some products have begun to incorporate violent and explicit themes. It is inevitable that some of these products will find their way into the hands of children. In our attempt to protect our children from those video and computer games which contain violent and mature themes, however, we must not lose sight of the fact that the vast majority of video and computer games are appropriate for children and have the potential for developing many important and socially desirable skills. For example, it is a fact that children who are labeled as having short attention spans can focus for hours on a video or computer game, discovering rules and patterns by an active and interactive process of trial and error. Surely the potential of this medium for bettering our children's education and thinking skills is enormous. I was sitting next to, in the first part of the panel, Mr. Terry Valesky, who's the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Atari. He was telling me what Atari has recently done. They've taken their newest video machine, which is called the Jaguar, and brought it to cancer wards of children's hospitals throughout the country. He told me it was amazing to see how these children who are victims of a disease that are taking over their life felt empowered when they could act and interact with new technology, when they could shoot down a spaceship. There's many very positive things that come from the new technology. And even the literature that the Children's Television Research and Education Center presents, Dr. Page, of course, represents them today. In the literature, it asks the question, is there anything good about playing video games? And the answer is, sure there is. Like puzzles, board games, and other forms of interactive entertainment, playing videos can help kids relax, learn new game strategies, develop concentration skills, and achieve goals. If they are playing with others, it can also be a great time for socialization. I also thought it would be interesting to note that SPA puts out each month the top-selling software. In September 1993, the majority of the software titles, game titles, that are most sold are ones that really have nothing to do with violence, and I know that this committee will find that interesting. Microsoft Flight Simulator, Privateer, which is a spaceship arcade role-playing game, Front Page Sports, which is a football game, X-Wing, Lands of Lore, which is a fantasy role-playing, SimCity. I'm not going to go on with naming all of these, but many of these games are good, fun games. Finally, I just want to point out that computer-based games traditionally have been targeted to an older audience than some of the original video games. That's because in part they're geared to an audience that uses computers and keyboards, and the target audience age has been 18 to 45. But on to my second point. After talking to industry...
I don't want to censor you either, but the red light's on, so to the extent that you can, if you would try to summarize the second and third points.
I certainly will, thank you. My second point is that after talking to industry leaders such as Sega, 3DO, Philips Interactives, hundreds of our SPA members, the Video Software Dealers Association, SPA is pleased to pledge its support to do whatever is required to help the industry create a uniform and fair system that will provide parents and consumers with the information they need to make informed choices when purchasing or renting video and computer games. In just the past 2 days, SPA has received over 130 letters from entertainment software developers asking it to take the lead in working with industry to develop, implement, and administer such a system. This outpouring of support from so many companies is a reflection of the industry's commitment to the well-being of America's children. I would like to submit these letters to the committee. Finally, my third point is that We should note that the issue is not whether to place a rating on video and computer game products. Many leading entertainment companies already place ratings on their products, particularly products that contain graphic violence or sexually explicit material. Rather, the issue is how best to create, promote, and enforce a standard that is helpful to parents in selecting appropriate products for their children. This is clearly a job for industry, and it is our intention to step forward and do that job. At the request of its members, the SPA has joined with other concerned parties present today to initiate the process of developing and implementing a uniform rating or labeling standard. We anticipate working with experts in the fields of child psychology, sociology, and
She's
education,
all right.
as well as industry leaders. This
She's more informed
and
than
national education
the
and
beard
parent
guy,
teachers groups
Eugene.
to set guidelines for determining suitable content for children of various ages. The process will be an open one, and all interested parties are invited to participate. The first steps of the process will begin in just a few weeks with a meeting of interested parties at the Consumer Electronics Show, an appropriate professional forum for such a meeting. It is our intention to complete development of the uniform rating standard within the coming year. Mr. Chairman, the SPA is pleased to facilitate and support the effort to create and administer a uniform standard. Our industry has a strong tradition of social responsibility and action in the public interest, and this issue will be no exception. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roosevelt. Just to clarify, just as a matter of fact, you mentioned Apple and IBM belong to the association. They're not involved in what we're talking about here. Is that right? In other words, with the video games, you also represent software publishers who, in that sense, create the games that are then produced by Nintendo, Sega, whatever. Is that correct?
Yes, we represent, well, actually, in some cases, the hardware companies also distribute software products, so they would be involved. But we represent many of the software producers of computer interactive games.
Right, so that in the case of Mortal Kombat, for instance, that was a game that was not developed by Sega or Nintendo. It was developed by someone else, and they licensed it from that person. That's the way the business works.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and next, Dawn Wiener, who's
Midway
the president
forever.
of the Software Dealers Association.
Good afternoon, Senator Cole, Senator Lieberman, and Senator Dorgan. I am Dawn Wiener, president of the Video Software Dealers Association, and we are the national trade organization that represents the $16 billion home video industry. I am also president and the principal stockholder of Home Video Plus in Austin, Texas. I've been in the retail home video business for more than 10 years and have served on the VSDA Board of Directors for 4 years. With more than 4,000 member companies, VSDA's Home Video Entertainment Network encompasses some 20,000 retail locations, representing more than 80% of the industry's total annual revenue. Each week, approximately 57 million consumers visit home video stores to rent and purchase pre-recorded videos, video games, and a growing array of home entertainment products. Interactive video game rentals and sales are one of the fastest growing segments of our business. With the rapid growth of CD-ROM and other interactive video formats, we anticipate that this form of home entertainment will become an increasingly important component of our industry. But the explosion of the interactive video game market is a relatively recent phenomenon. The video game industry is still in an early stage of development. As president of the Video Dealers Association, and perhaps more importantly, as a mother of 3 children, I am very concerned about the depictions of gratuitous violence in all forms of entertainment. But I am also concerned about governmental actions that may endanger 2 of our most cherished freedoms, freedom of expression and the freedom to make our own individual choices concerning our private lives. We believe the creation of any governmental or quasi-governmental organization, such as the proposed National Independent Council for Entertainment and Video Devices, is unnecessary. And let me tell you why. A few months ago, we began working with video game manufacturers and others involved in the interactive video game industry to create a comprehensive, industry-wide voluntary rating system for interactive video. We have announced a major video game and new technology conference for April 10th and 11th in Chicago, where interactive video manufacturers, distributors, and retailers will meet to discuss a variety of issues, including content and ratings. We see a very high degree of agreement among the manufacturers about the need for a comprehensive rating system and the desire to implement such a system. The Software Publishers Association has taken the lead in developing this rating system with participation from both manufacturers and retailers. One company, Sega of America, has already put in place a ratings program for its own games. We believe this is an excellent starting point. As the Los Angeles Times said in a recent editorial concerning video game content, Sega's leadership should be applauded. The industry recognizes that it is now time to implement an industry-wide rating system. We believe such a voluntary rating system will address the concerns of this panel and indeed of the American people regarding interactive video content. Our work with the rating system operated by the Motion Picture Association of America gives us the experience and the confidence to make such a statement. The MPAA rating system, which was introduced in 1968, has proven to be very successful and is an effective tool to help parents decide which movies are appropriate for viewing for their children. This rating system has been used effectively by video retailers for many years to enforce in-store policies regarding the rental and sale of video product to minors. In 1991, VSDA formalized the use of the MPAA system through the introduction of our Pledge to Parents program, which established an industry standard restricting the rental and sale to minors of R and NC-17 rated materials. Through our Pledge to Parents program, we provide our members with a parental consent form, store poster, and other materials that they can use to explain this policy to their customers. We also require all members of our home video entertainment network to sign a certification promising to make every effort never to rent, sell, or give any video product rated NC-17 to persons under the age of 17, or any video product restricted R to persons under the age of 17 without parental consent. These efforts are designed to give parents the information they need to make informed choices about entertainment product for their children. This program is working extremely well.
Nice.
Consumers understand the rating system and use it to evaluate video product. Since the introduction of the Pledge to Parents program, we have had very few consumer complaints about minors obtaining inappropriate video products from our members. With the growth of interactive video products, concerns about content have shifted to this arena. Today, you have challenges to move ahead quickly with the implementation of a video game rating system. We accept this challenge, and I firmly believe the American people will be far better served by a voluntary system than by any government-imposed or prescribed system. The VSDA and our 20,000 store home video entertainment network pledge to support the video game manufacturers by working with our members to enforce the voluntary system now under development by restricting the access of minors to inappropriate video games.
They never asked you for your parents'
members
consent?
are not only video retailers and business people, but many are mothers and fathers
M and
who are
MC-17
concerned
were different.
about the future of their children. We believe a voluntary rating system for interactive video will protect our children while preserving our cherished freedoms of expression and choice. Thank you for the opportunity to express the views of the Video Software Dealers Association and its nationwide home video entertainment network of retail stores.
Thank you, Ms. Weiner. And finally on this panel, Mr. Craig Johnson of the Amusement and Music Operators Association, which I assume includes what we might call arcades or other places where video games are played.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
My name is Craig Johnson, and I am the immediate past president of the Amusement Music Operators Association, better known as AMOA. Our association is a 1,700-member association made up of owner-operators of coin-operated amusement devices such as video games. I think it is important to note that our membership deals in commercially placed amusement devices and does not, as a rule, deal in the home video game market. I also think it important to note that as owner-operators of amusement devices, we do not manufacture amusement devices. We do, as AMOA, however, have in our membership some 140 manufacturers. I'm here today to address the concerns of video game violence from the point of view of the commercial game owner, the individual that has invested a significant amount of money in owning and operating video games. Our association, our most recent convention, October 21st of this year, took a position and expressed our concerns to the manufacturers and the industry as a whole. Our position states AMOA believes that the current trend of the escalating use of violence in video games will prove to be detrimental to the industry in the long term. We are currently seeing parents and safety advocate groups speaking out against video games and their use of graphic violence. AMOA believes that it is indeed possible to design successful video games without the use of graphic violence. AMOA believes that if the graphic use of violence continues, our industry will suffer repercussions similar to the regulatory backlash of the early 1980s, with state and local governments receiving pressure to further regulate and tax the industry. AMOA encourages all manufacturers to design games with wide appeal and design without the excessive use of graphic violence. That's the end of our position. While AMOA does not manufacture video games and cannot control what designers put into their games, we do believe that the violence in the games would best be controlled within the industry through self-policing policies. At least in the coin-op side of the industry, this is a relatively new issue, and most games that are now on the streets in commercial operation have been under design for some time. In many cases, the design of video games takes over 1 year to complete. We appreciate the attention Congress is giving the issue. Your interest will help our industry focus on the situation and the solution. I encourage you to allow the industry
We
time
think
to
it'll be
take care of their own
detrimental to the
problems
video games.
and to limit and control the violence that is now in some games. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Thank you all. Mr. White, let me begin with you, and I suppose in one sense go to the heart of the matter. We saw the clip before from Night Trap with the woman being attacked, and I said earlier that I thought that violence was gratuitous and offensive and ought not to be available to people in our
here's
society.
your chance to get back at Nintendo.
Mr. Lincoln, just there a few moments ago, as vice president of the other leading company in this field, Nintendo, said, and I quote, "This game simply has no place in our society." Why don't you agree? Why doesn't Sega just pull Night Trap off the market?
I think, Senator, with all due respect, the point I tried to make in my oral arguments and testimony was that this industry, as part of the interactive media industry, has grown tremendously. The children represent only a portion of the audience that we try to serve with our interactive software. Night Trap was developed specifically for an adult audience. Sega took a leadership position in establishing an independent rating council and appropriately labeled Night Trap MA-17, not appropriate for children. And we believe, just as Congress has treated the motion picture industry, that we as an industry should have an opportunity to regulate ourselves, and believe that we've taken that first step this morning in developing an industry-wide coalition to adopt an industry rating system with enforcement.
I must say that the exercise of responsibility, do you think it's even appropriate for you to be pushing that stuff out there for adult audiences to use? I mean, it's...
Well, I think it's
with the way in which the woman is attacked. I mean, clearly she's dressed provocatively. She's brutally attacked by the people dressed in dark clothes there. Is that... Why even... You've mentioned a list of products that your company produces. A lot of them are great. Why do you need to go across that line and produce this stuff for adults or kids?
Let me make 2 points. First, if you showed only the violent and gory scenes from out of context consecutively, one after the other, from Roots or Gone with the Wind, you might conclude they're horrible films. But in reality, they aren't. And what you've done is picked a particular segment of that game. Let me clarify. A winning effort within Night Trap saves the women. Your job as the player is to identify the villains and to trap them. If you are a good player, you keep the villains from the women and men who are potential victims.
Exactly. And men.
This game
it's
is an
not
appropriate
sexist.
game for adults that choose to entertain themselves in this way, shape, and form.
If you're a bad player, what happens?
If you're a bad player, you will see that scene.
The woman gets attacked.
The woman gets attacked.
You're going to have a long way to go to convince me that you're raising anyone's values or reducing anyone's inclination toward aggression, and particularly aggression toward women, by putting this on.
We agree with much of what was said on the earlier panel. We believe that more research is necessary. To conclude the effect that these games are having on both.
Oh my god.
To conclude the effect that these games are having on both adults and children. The point we want to make is that
until the research is done.
Until the research is done, we feel it's an appropriate step to develop an industry-wide rating system which has enforcement that will allow adults, which represent 60% of the players for the Sega CD system, to make the choice as to whether or not that game is right or wrong for them.
Let me talk to you about the rating system. I understand your argument. I disagree with it that you have a broad market and it includes adults as well as kids. And you've set up the rating system to try to give advice as to how to distinguish. Incidentally, my staff, in going into a number of stores where your products are sold, has never seen that poster that you put up explaining what the rating system is. Is it displayed in stores?
Senator, I'm sorry, I did not mean to suggest that it was displayed in stores. It is part of our Everyone Wins brochure.
Okay, but
it's distributed at 2,800 retail outlets. We make it available to all of our key retailers. We also provide a holder for this, but ultimately it is the retailer's responsibility to keep it on the counter as opposed to behind the counter.
Well, at a minimum, I hope that you're doing everything you can, if you're basing your argument on the rating system, to make sure that people first understand what the rating system is, and then, as we'll show in some of the ads, at least get a chance to look at it. My staff went into Circuit City. Here's a brochure that you put out. Sega Hot 93 titles. Okay, in the midst of this, you've got Night Trap.
Oh, yeah.
Right alongside, Joe Montana's NFL football and Spider-Man versus Kingpin and Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, with no indication that of the content of this, and that you, as you've said just now, expect this only to be bought by kids. So, is this responsible advertising?
Senator Lieberman, we've taken the first step to what we believe is a more appropriate industry-wide rating system. Just as the motion picture industry produces films for children as well as for adults, the interactive entertainment industry, as it grows with the technology available, will continue to produce product that's appropriate for both children and adults. We would like to see better enforcement at retail. We would like to see the ratings prominently displayed in the advertising of all the games. That is a step that we will take with the industry-wide coalition.
Do you agree that this is irresponsible then? I mean, if
that was developed, Senator Lieberman, prior to our full implementation of the rating system. What I'm saying is that we as a company believe in the action and the steps that you're suggesting we take, and we're prepared to move in that direction.
You're saying if your defense on Night Trap is that it's for your adult market, then it seems to me you got an obligation to put out a separate Hot 93 titles for adults instead of. This was just picked off the shelf by one of our staff people, and it was just done in the last week. Now, if you've updated your rating system, I hope that you'll also update your promotional system. Let me go on.
He just said that, you retard. That's why he's just nodding his head. He's like, I just fucking said that, you fucking idiot.
You're here as the company.
He just said that.
Not the whole company, but I find the course of behavior by Sega the most objectionable here in these games that we're talking
Lieberman's
about.
so cringy.
I want to show you the tape of an advertisement
Extra Hot 93
for Mortal Kombat. Now this game is rated MA13. It has the death scenes.
The death scenes
at the end that we talked about.
Yes.
MA13 means that it's not appropriate for children.
I love the death scenes.
Under 13, but just take a look at this ad that Sega placed promoting Mortal Kombat and some other games, and tell me whether it doesn't have the effect of encouraging children under 13 to buy Mortal Kombat.
Oh, they're gonna play the Mortal Kombat commercial. Cool.
So he gets Sega Genesis.
Oh, we gotta rewind it. That's the wrong ad. No.
We're gonna take it back to the beginning. Kathy, can you make that brighter at all?
Young Bobby Engels has a problem. He needs to earn the respect of his peers. So he gets Sega Genesis,
Yeah.
the Ultimate Action System.
Yes.
And then he buys Mortal Kombat
Yeah.
Edition, and the all-new Shinobi 3, and Marvel's X-Men. Now, things are pretty much okay.
Exactly. It's because he got MK.
I said chocolate chip.
Welcome to the next level.
Say it.
Sega!
Okay, to me, the, if I may, the nerd that you have made into a hero
Nerd?
by
You
encouraging him to buy
bastard.
Mortal Kombat looks to be
He looks 13.
under 13.
Oh,
The
bullshit!
ad certainly is calculated to
Bullshit!
encourage kids to buy that game, and I'd be interested in knowing, apart from the content of the
That
ad,
is
which
so
directed
fucking bullshit.
towards children, what you can possibly do in placing that ad on television to make sure that kids under 13 are not watching it and therefore feeling that their masculinity, or if not their freedom from bullies, will be determined by whether they play this game.
That advertisement was directed to teens specifically, not to children. I can't comment on the age of the cast within the commercial because I'm just not familiar with it.
Exactly.
The intent with the Sega video game rating system and the independent council, and the packaging guidelines that we've established, Senator, is to take a first step. And we're proud of that step we've taken. We don't believe it's perfect, but we do believe that more information and a better rating system is the answer, not regulation and certainly not censorship.
Well, you've kept repeating it, and boy, I agree with you. The rating system is only a first step, and it is a fig leaf to cover a lot of transgressions. If you do not spread out here and both enforce it better, and I hope apply a little bit of self-control to yourselves, but make sure it gets carried along, because that kid looks to me like he's under 13.
Oh, bullshit!
Am I right that you have no way of
fucking witch
placing
hunt
it like that on television, of guaranteeing that younger kids are not?
They show him in a high school at the start with getting his ear flicked.
Shows.
No, that ad would not be permitted on children's television, and children's television shows were not bought as a part of that. But you're right. We buy television time that's directed towards teenagers or television time that's directed towards children. That ad was not approved for children's television. It was directed towards teenagers and on time that was purchased for directed at teenagers.
Okay. Again, in terms of your emphasis on the rating system, Attorney General Dan Lundgren of California, who is also not one of your fans, spoke with me the other day. And as you know, he's been troubled by the violence and graphic sex in the video games.
I'm one of his fans.
He
See you guys
discussed with me
fucking
and
cool.
sent me an ad from GamePro magazine. Now, these involve Sega products, although I see that it's placed by Namco, so you'll have to tell me whether you're responsible for it.
I'm sorry.
Okay, let me just direct you, and I don't know to what extent you have any ability to control this. At the top, it says he's back. Splatterhouse 3 for the Sega Genesis is the kind of game rating systems were invented for. Now, and then it goes on at the bottom to advertise that it includes deadly new weapons, 6 levels
back.
of monster
Splatterhouse
bashing
3.
mayhem, and killer special moves.
Killer special moves.
Don't you agree that that kind of advertisement makes a mockery of your rating system? By that I mean to say the specific reference that this is the kind of game that rating systems were invented for.
I haven't seen this advertisement, Senator Lieberman, and we don't have
you've got
control.
it now,
We don't have control over what
I
an
understand.
independent publisher would say about our system, nor I believe would the motion picture industry have control over what an individual studio might
Someone
say
mentioned
about the MPA
Splatterhouse
guidelines.
earlier in
Would
the
you agree,
chat.
just having seen it now, that makes a mockery of your rating system? And I can't believe that's what you want your independent producers to do with your rating system.
We want to go to the next step, Senator, and that's why we've worked
He already said
around
that,
the clock
Senator
over the last
Dick
2 weeks
Face.
to establish an industry coalition to work with your committee and the other members of Congress to develop an industry-wide system that will be more effective.
He's back. Splatterhouse 3.
Okay, well, there's a lot of work to do. To put it mildly.
I'm gonna have to check that game out.
Mr. Lincoln, let me just ask you one question. I appreciate the extent to which you have self-regulated to some degree, and I also appreciate the fact that you've accepted today the idea of a rating system, because even though the materials that you've been producing are less violent and less graphically sexual than others have, nonetheless there is violence in them. And it is still possible, obviously, for a parent
Yeah,
buying a
Nintendo.
Nintendo game to not appreciate the level of violence.
You're
in it.
guilty.
Dr. Provenzo, in his
Nintendo.
book, I think, which focused on Nintendo, felt that there was a lot of violence in the Nintendo products. My question is, I guess my point is that I appreciate the rating system that you've adopted, and I guess my question is, would you accept the responsibility to try to make sure that every link that Nintendo is involved in, such as the advertisements and the brochures that we've discussed with Mr. White, follows out carries out your desires with the rating system?
Mario
Well, we'll certainly do that.
Turtles and Goombas.
You know, the point that I'm making, Senator,
guy should be
is
taken off
that
shelf.
the game ratings, it just doesn't go far enough. We have to get our hands
Those
on the
poor
game
Goombas.
content. And we've been doing that.
They're just
But
walking along and
like
you
any
squish
other,
them.
System is not perfect. Let me make just a couple of other points. I can't sit here and allow you to be told that somehow the video game business has been transformed today from children to adults. It hasn't been, and Mr. White, who is a former Nintendo employee, knows the demographics as well as I do. Furthermore, I can't let you sit here and buy this nonsense that this Sega Night Trap game was somehow only meant for adults.
I'm not
The fact of the
buying
matter
that.
is, this is a copy of the packaging. There was no rating on this game at all when the game was introduced.
He's right, actually.
Small children bought this at Toys R Us, and he knows that as well as
Except
I do. When they
small
started
children
getting
didn't
heat
buy it.
about this game,
Small
then
children.
they adopted the rating system and put ratings on it. But today, just as I'm sitting here, you can go into a Toys R Us store or a Walmart or a Kmart, and you know as well as I do that you can buy this product, and no one, certainly no sales clerk at retail, is going to challenge you. So the point I'm getting at is putting these ratings on, if that's as far as we're going to go, isn't going to get us anywhere. We've got to get further into this. And let me say that I agree that everything that we've done has
Point
not
for
been
Nintendo.
perfect. As a matter of fact, when I came into the hearing room this morning, I saw that you've got an advertisement up here for one of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System games that says they've got a bullet with your name on it. And let me tell you what I did. I phoned my office to find out that that licensee put that advertisement out without our consent, without our review, and without our permission. And unless that
What game's that?
advertisement is withdrawn, that company is in breach of its license agreement.
Ocean.
So we do have, just as Sega does in the case of Namco, which is a Sega licensee, the ability
Namco.
and the right
Maybe that's Splatterhouse.
to control advertising by our licensees, and we take that seriously. And I'm going to apologize to this committee for the fact that we slipped up and our licensee didn't tell us about this. But let me tell you, when I get back to Seattle, I will call that licensee.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your forthrightness. Thanks for assuming
Oh, he's
responsibility.
thanking him.
I believe you've shown some leadership here. You're not
He's
perfect,
thanking
as you
him.
said, but you're
Saying,
you're damn
oh, we
sight
didn't
better than the
know.
competition.
Bullshit.
It's not well and good to say that we have content guidelines. Sega of America has content guidelines as well. I had the opportunity on Tuesday to meet with your staff and some of the others
Nintendo,
to
man.
show some of the
They've
Nintendo
taken 3
video
shots at
games to the
Sega.
staff and compare the level of violence in the
It's a
Nintendo
dope
video
hat.
games to
It
the
is.
same game on the Sega platform. And I'd be pleased to show a minute or a minute and a half of that comparison to demonstrate that the contents that the guidelines that Mr. Lincoln speaks of continue to allow excessive violence in these games without the benefit of a rating system, without the benefit of clear packaging, saying this is for mature audiences. Our system, our voluntary system with independent
I know
Rating
Lieberman and the
Council
Nintendo
suggests
guy
that
really,
all fighting games
they're gay
receive
for
an
each other.
MA13 label and warning,
Big time.
so that parents can decide whether that level of activity, aggressive activity in a video game, should or
Lieberman
should not
hates
be
the
allowed into
Sega
their
guy.
house. Nintendo continues to suggest that their internal
Yeah, Howard's
guidelines
lying
are
big time.
appropriate and go far enough. It simply doesn't.
Go ahead and show it, and then we'll. And Senator Cole is
I want to see it.
patient.
I want to see this bit. I don't remember this bit. Street Fighter!
According to NPD research, Street Fighter II on the Super Nintendo was their #1 game last year.
Oh, that's violent, Nintendo. What are you doing?
You saw the Nintendo version, now the Sega version. Same level of violence.
Same level of violence.
No
Exactly.
rating.
No rating. Nintendo, you're full of shit. Fuck, look at that. My God, he smashed him into the box. No rating.
Senator Cole is in a question now, but Mr. White, let me just say this to you. Today, Mr. Lincoln, on behalf of Nintendo, has accepted the idea of a rating system. They have previously been self-regulating more than you have. They chose not to produce Night Trap, and they have a clearly less violent version of Mortal Kombat out.
Burn!
System, but
Shit
I still
version.
not today heard you accept responsibility for regulating the content of your games more than you already are. And I regret that. And that, I think, notwithstanding the tape you've shown us, which doesn't compare, in my opinion, to Mortal Kombat and Night Trap.
Yeah, they didn't say it was
is what
racist.
Senator Cole.
They could have said that.
Thank you, Senator Lieberman. I'd like to ask both Mr. Lincoln and Mr. White the following question. As you move and expand your business and move into the adult market and create product for the adult market only and sell it in your stores, adults come to buy it, do you have any way of guaranteeing the American people that their children aren't going to see it?
No.
Mr. White?
No, we don't.
Let Nicholas.
Senator, all we can do is work with the mechanisms that are available to us, and that's what we want to do through this industry-wide coalition. And that's why we're so pleased to see the VSDA here.
So that there's no way in which we can
Speak for yourself. I do Hadoukens all the time.
Material that some of us might think doesn't belong on the market at all isn't in fact going to get on the market and then be viewed by children.
Well, Senator Cole, it's similar to the motion picture.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
I just want to clarify so everybody understands where this all leads.
There's an interesting difference between Sega and Nintendo in this matter in that we have moved ahead with CD technology using a CD-ROM player as an interactive entertainment device. We have Sega CD on the market. We've had it in the market since November of 1992. Nintendo does not have a CD-ROM device. They continue to focus their marketing efforts against children. We have recognized that the interactive entertainment market
Point for
is
Sega.
far larger than just a children's market. The demographics of our Sega CD player, which are 60% adults, suggests that that is the fact. And we would like to see a rating system that will allow us to develop games for that broad array of players.
What'd I do?
But give the consumer the information necessary to make an appropriate decision for his or her family.
All right. Do you want to say something, Mr. Lincoln?
Well, I didn't realize that the hearing was focused on market share. I thought we were talking about regulation.
Oh, says the guy's taking three shots at
my colleagues might
Sega.
think differently. Let me say this: the
piece of shit,
biggest
Howard.
problem we have here is in a rating system is try to figure out some way of enforcing it. And you, Senator Cole, as a former retailer, I think
Finally, Sega's on the
understand
board.
that as well as I do. Being a
Nintendo don't
businessman.
even rate their games.
If we simply put these ratings, this game is violent.
I hate Howard.
On this packaging, however we do it, and we don't have the cooperation of retailers, if we don't have some enforcement mechanism, my own personal view is that that really may be a step backward, and we may really only be encouraging people to make more violent games. certainly the industry is moving
Walter
into
White
different
calling Jack
territory with new technology.
It's true.
Nintendo, for
It's
example, is going to
true.
be coming out with a 64-bit system in the future. But the point of that is
He
that
mentioned N64
graphics, are
back
going
in
to
'93.
become,
Holy shit, dude!
much better. And my sense is that
they knew
unless
about it
we
back
can
then.
get everybody in this business, not just the video game companies, but the retailers and the government, involved in putting a stop to the kind of things that you're seeing in Night Trap, we're really deceiving ourselves that we're going to keep this kind of violence out of the hands of children.
Right.
Senator Cole, may I address this?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Weiner.
I'd like to state that back in September, we made a concerted effort as the
back then, the Ultra
VSDA to
64,
meet with
yeah.
all the video game manufacturers. Sega helped to implement it. We had 8 different manufacturers show up.
Oh!
Nintendo declined.
Nintendo declined the rating system. Sega were pro
rating system and how we were going to implement that system. We talked to them.
Nintendo are fucking shifty, man.
NDAA works, and that even if it is not 100% possible.
Yeah,
to
I remember
control
that
everything,
ad.
By having a rating, it gives the parent the opportunity to make a decision.
And Cruising USA
if
used to say it
is a
too.
good video game for my child or not. Without any rating, you have no idea really what the content is of that video game. You just know your child is coming home and saying, I want Mortal Kombat because everybody on the street has it.
Of course.
So we have been working with Sega since September. They have, this is not something they just started in the past 2 weeks. They have worked with us continually for the past 2 weeks to put a coalition together, but this really was implemented back in
Nicholas.
September. We feel that the retailers, based on what we've been able to do with the NDAA system, will be very effective when we do get a good voluntary system in place.
Senator, just
Yes.
one
Go ahead, Ms.
comment.
Weiner.
I'm sorry, but Ms. Weiner has failed to tell you
Oh.
that Nintendo does not distribute its video games to VSDA members. Sega does. So obviously, Nintendo is not the VSDA's
you
favorite
cheeky
customer.
bastard.
We also represent Toys R Us and Walmart.
Oh!
We are not just the video rental business.
Mic
We
drop.
also represent the video game sales business.
All right. Mr. Johnson,
They represent
what standards
Sega,
does the arcade
Walmart, and
industry have
fucking
to
Toys R
prevent
Us.
children's
Nintendo
access
told them
the
to get
kind
fucked.
of, material that we don't want them to see?
Well, the arcades in the street, we believe, are going to have the greatest standards of anybody, and that's going to be economic.
Now, what kind of do you have any way of keeping the kids from?
Have absolutely no way of keeping the children. If it comes out in a commercial coin-op game and it goes into the arcade environment, certainly the children are going to see it. There's just no question about that.
Exactly.
The impact that's happening today in the commercial coin-op market is coming from the locations themselves. Keep in mind that our members, which own the equipment, typically place it in other establishments owned by those other than themselves. Movie theaters, restaurants.
Cruising USA
bowling
only has that
alleys,
on the home
arcade
version.
chains, things of that nature. And we have noticed, and hence that's why we came
The
out
head
with our
appears and
policy
says,
when
"I
we
love
did it in
this job."
October, is because in the last 60 to 90 days, we have started receiving phone calls from these locations. The movie theaters.
Yeah, no deer smashing, you're right.
I personally, in my own business, do one large amusement park who called me and said, we've got one particular game, we've had a couple parental complaints, we'd like it out. And so we are starting to see economic pressure not to have and operate these
I wonder what
types of
game that
equipment.
was. I wonder if it was MK.
Well, in the interest of moving on, let me just give you an overall impression. And I, as a person who's sitting here and listening and trying to observe, and probably also in the shoes and in the minds of all those people who are watching on TV and will be reading accounts of what happened in the newspaper, there's really a serious problem here. I mean, this is not a dog and pony show. And sometimes I fear, and having sat through a few of these hearings, I sat through a few with the movie industry, that there is always an attempt to get by the hearing. Just get by, offer them meetings, tell them we're going to be in a week and a 2 in a month, and we're going to, don't worry about it, we're going to take care of it, we're going to self-police. I've heard this before. And it's disturbing, naturally, because you want to see progress, and there are only so much we can do here.
I know.
because we have
If Sony and
constitutional
Microsoft were around back then.
responsibilities and
Fuck.
constitutional restrictions and rights of free speech and all these things that we want to observe in this country. At the same time, none of us want to see our kids go down the tubes.
Down the tubes.
None of us do.
But
You
in
might
Mario,
look at
you go down the
something else
tubes.
and say, no, that's really bad. They ought to do something about it. That's kids and guns. And that's not something that you control. That's something that we try and do something about here. But you might look at it as an American parent and not involved in a business. You might say, now, they really need to do something about that. And if they can't, we have a serious problem in this country. And we're trying to do something about it. People watching here today are saying the same thing about some of the problems that we're discussing here. They need to do something about it. How are they going to do something about it? You're saying, give us till April 10th or 11th, and we'll have the problem solved, or something like that.
No, we said we have a video game conference.
I understand. We're going to regulate ourselves, give us till April 10th or 11th, and we will satisfy not the needs of Senator Dorgan, Lieberman, and Senator Cole, the needs of the American people to see this industry regulated in a, quote, proper fashion.
You guys are watching.
Well, maybe we'll be around on September 10th and 11th, and we will not have taken action by then, and maybe we will. But there is a serious problem here, a real serious problem. And the fact that you find much with which to disagree with each other on this morning, I think is encouraging. I mean, you know, it indicates that you're not here.
I still can't believe Nintendo, man.
That you really have some concerns about
3
what
shots
each
at
other
Sega.
are doing, and are worried perhaps that you're going to
Normally it's Sega who attacks Nintendo.
kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs. And you can. That could happen. And I
Doom wasn't out
surprised
yet.
that in your corporate offices you are concerned about that.
It was only these 3 games that were mentioned in this
because you are
hearing.
treading on very sensitive area here, and we will do everything we can to protect the American
Yeah, but it wasn't
interest,
mentioned as
considering
part
our
of this.
constitutional restrictions. But we will do everything we can. And
I think
we
it
do
probably
consider
came out
it.
right after.
We want to, you know, and I'm not really suggesting. We want you to take care of your problems.
Otherwise, they
yourself,
would have
but
mentioned it for
I
sure.
hope you walk away
They
with
would've.
one thought today, that if you don't do something about it, we will.
Sexual tension.
And it's from where I'm sitting, if
The
you
old
walk
guys are
away with
backed
that
up.
thought, then I'm satisfied that this hearing has had some real positive possibilities to it. Thank you very much, Senator Lieberman.
Oh, Duke
Senator
was
Dorgan.
a lot later, dude.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Let me ask Mr.
90.
Johnson. In a typical video arcade,
95, I want to
saw
say.
one before
Maybe
Thanksgiving,
94.
At the mall in Minneapolis, the largest mall of America, I believe they call it. Would you find Mortal Kombat,
Yes.
Night Trap?
You wouldn't find Night Trap, no. To
You
my
find-
knowledge, I've certainly never seen Night Trap
Would you
out in
find
the commercial
Sega's
version.
version?
Man, I
of
wish they
Mortal
had that on
Kombat in
arcade.
that arcade?
That would have been the
Well,
best.
in the coin-op, Mortal Kombat is not put out by either Sega or Nintendo. It's put out by a Illinois company.
Is there any supervision in those arcades
Midway!
that you're aware of? I mean, the reason I ask the question is I don't see a bunch of college sophomores crowding that arcade. I saw a bunch of kids playing video games.
Yeah, because you went to
And
some
the question
fucking
is, if you've
Funland
got
fucking
video arcades where kids
bullshit.
spend hours playing video games. Is there any basis for believing that some of the more violent games are out of the reach of young
Nah,
children?
Doom and
In my
Duke Nukem
judgment,
were
No,
never banned.
absolutely not. And in fact, that's why if you look in the commercial coin-op side of the industry, and that's why it's so important that you understand the differentiation between the two. Night Trap, as an example, is not a coin-op piece. It is not out in coin-op. If you look through the list of the pieces that are available for the home market and the children, the vast majority of those are not out in coin-op. The one that we have spoken of today by name, of course, is Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
It is out in coin-op, and that is the one that where I'm telling you the market pressure has started to exert immediately.
Ooh.
That
Market
game was
pressure.
released, and I already know of countless numbers of owner-operators of video games that have had to pull it from location.
What?
Because of
I
location
don't
pressure. that
believe
says,
you.
I won't have this for my public.
I don't
I'm getting
believe
pressure
you.
From parent groups, from PTAs, get it out.
I
Well, let's
don't
see how
believe you.
society,
You're
to the extent that
lying.
Parents know what their children are playing in these arcades. All of you in the previous panel as well have talked about parental supervision.
I'll tell you
There's
why
all
he's
of us that
lying.
agree
Because
with
Mortal
that.
Kombat made so
Does
much
anybody here
fucking
have
money.
Any notion of how many babies are born this
If
year?
you got a call
on
from
wedlock?
some crazy parent going, "You
Mr.
gotta
White,
take
you?
it out," you got a
Over
game
a
that's
million.
making
Over a million.
$500 a day. You're not gonna take it out. No way.
Lifetime. Now, if you take a look
No
at
chance.
what's happening in this country with respect to
That
children who
promotes
are growing up
terrorism.
without supervision, without the parents that you so blithely say should supervise. I agree. There ought to be parent supervision and strong parent involvement in education and their children's viewing habits and so on. The fact is, in many cases, there aren't parents. What do you do about those kids? Do you just say, well, here we're gonna lay this on the market and let the buyer beware? If some kid can get access to it, fine. I understand that when Night Trap was released, it was not rated, and I might be wrong, but I understand that the first time you rated it at the 13 level.
You
Is that
are
not correct?
You're wrong, Senator. I'm sorry. The rating system went into effect in June. It was rated for the first time, and it was rated MA17. And
No worries,
it was
Kim.
produced with that label on it from that point forward.
And do you view those over the age of 13 as mature?
There's 3 designations that the Independent Rating Council chooses to designate the product. It's MA13, appropriate for teenagers and older, but not for young children with parental.
But doesn't have the word mature attached to that?
Yes, I believe it does.
And so the presumption is those over 13 years of age are mature?
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
With parental discretion. I'm referring now to
What are you thinking about?
the
You're
MA13
suggesting
titles.
that- Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to the MA13 titles, not the MA17.
I understand, but what are you thinking about if you believe that the establishment of a classification system identifies kids 13 or over as mature?
It's similar to, then the guidelines that the Independent Council uses are similar to those established by the motion picture industry on PG-13.
Well, you know...
Yeah. Got nothing to say now, do ya?
I think that all of us have great trouble with this question of censorship, and yet everybody in
Redirecting.
virtually every way understands that
Look
we
at him
have
redirect.
some responsibility to
Byron.
protect children.
Byron.
We don't say, well,
bastard.
Yes, we can drink in this country, and so it's
See,
fine for
efficient.
everybody to drink. We decide we're going to protect our children, for example, and we're going to have certain laws that try to protect them from access to alcohol.
Video
I mean,
game
we do
violence.
that in a whole range of areas. We treat them separately in the judicial system, in the criminal justice system. We do that in a range of areas. With respect to the question of the video arcade and the video games, in which a woman is grabbed by the neck with a hook, and drilled in the neck with a tool.
I
and
should put it
someone
on a
grabs the
t-shirt.
heart out of a character. We ought to have just as much concern about protecting our children against that sort of trash.
We should protect
as
our
we
kids
have
from
in
having their
dozens of
hearts
other
ripped out by
areas
other
protecting our
kids
children.
playing Mortal
And
Kombat.
honestly, Mr. White, I read your statement, and I honestly think that you don't understand what we're talking about here. Let me tell you why. In your final point about
This guy is
Night
so
Trap,
shit.
you say this. Finally, there is some research suggesting a short-term, momentary increase in playful, aggressive behavior after playing video games or watching violent television programs. There is no research concluding that this has any lasting impact.
Exactly.
In fact, quite the opposite is true. you see.
Rubbish.
My sense is that you really don't get what this hearing is about, and I don't mean to single you out. It's likely there are others that ought to be sitting in your place. But you know, we it seems to me have to begin to exercise some common sense to protect our children. And when you say, and when others say, and my guess is the person that marketed this particular game says, this is not for kids. This is adult entertainment. The fact is, you know and I know that kids in this country will have wide access to it. And we need to exercise responsibility to see that we protect those children. And frankly, prior to this hearing, I've seen very little effort on the part of people in the industry to do that.
You know, you're yelling
The
at the
effort
guy
has been
that's the only
try
guy
to
that
follow
tried
the
to
money
start a
trails
rating system,
and see
right?
how you can profit. Unfortunately, profiting at the expense of America's kids is not moral profit.
He's
in
the
my
only
judgment.
guy
My
that
hope is
tried to
this
make a
hearing
rating system.
provides a direction
And you're
that is
telling
much
him
more
off for
constructive
it.
for this country and for our kids.
He's the only one who tried.
Thank you, Senator
Nintendo
Gordon.
didn't
Thank
even
you very
try.
much. I look forward to continue to work with you. I have some more
Nintendo did
questions.
nothing.
Mr. White, in the rating system that Sega has, beyond the MA17, MA13, and the rest, you have a category non-approval.
Yes.
So that that's indication on the guidelines themselves that Sega has established that you profess an intention to exercise some self-control here. And I read from the latest version of the guidelines, which is December 2nd of 1993.
Nintendo paid off Byron, exactly.
As always, Sega will not approve products which contain A1, material that encourages criminality of any kind. Isn't making a game
Oh, yeah.
and selling it that encourages a kid to point a gun at a television set and rewards his success or her success by increasing the firepower of the gun,
Increasing the
encouraging
firepower of the gun.
criminality. I mean, we're all aware
That
of
doesn't
this
even
incredible
happen.
outbreak of
But yeah.
gun violence in our
Yeah,
country.
gun
Is it
violence.
responsible? Let me put it another way. Is it within the terms of the guidelines that you've
My gun gets
established
more and more powerful.
to make a game that
become
puts
the
this in the
ultimate
hand
criminal.
of a child and rewards his skill at shooting at the television screen, and the characters in it, including, as Senator Cole said, innocent bystanders who when hit are pumped back and
they pump
bleed.
back.
Senator, we rely on the independent rating council to help us make those decisions because
That's a
we
dig
as
against
corporate are not
lethal
psychologists,
enforcers.
we're not sociologists, we do not understand the detail of that research that was discussed at the first panel. We rely on experts to help make those decisions. And they have rated that product MA17, only appropriate for adults. I may also point out that Sega produces product for a rapid fire machine gun.
Oh!
It uses the same technology to
Oh!
games available, and they have no rating on that product to suggest that product's for adults.
No rating.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's a similar device. It's a bazooka rather than a handgun.
And what is the game that
Oh!
is that for a video game? Mr. Lincoln, do you want to?
This is a thing that
It's
comes
a
with
thing.
the, or can be
He doesn't
purchased
even
with
know
the
what it
Super
is.
NES. It obviously doesn't
It's their
quite
product.
look like what you've got in your hands. It's called the Super Scope. The gun that you have in your hand is called the Justifier. I think that this game is a target shoot. This device is for target shooting and whatnot. I guess I'd rest my case with the fact that we're not putting the name Justifier on it. And the game that you're speaking of, Lethal Enforcer, let me tell you that game was initially rejected by Nintendo. We told the licensee that we would not allow that game on the market. We told him that that they would have to take off the word Justifier, and we made a number of substantial changes to it. And we also told
Guess
them
what?
we wouldn't approve this kind of packaging. The end result is that product is not yet out on the Nintendo.
I know they did take it off.
Before it
I didn't think
goes
they
out
did.
on the market,
Because this
you'll
is the
think again
Nintendo
about it,
gun.
Because it's more than the name Justifier on this. This is a handgun. Pure and simple. And no matter what the name is on it, putting it in the hands of a kid just gives them the wrong idea. As I must say, to me that looks like a weapon, and not like
Oh yeah, the blue color makes it clearly look like a
high-tech
weapon.
implement of any kind. It looks like an assault weapon of some kind. Let me go to another part of this problem, and that is the chain of distribution, the chain of advertising. Because if you establish a rating system, it's got to be carried out throughout the chain. As you indicated earlier, I went into, one of my staff members this morning went into a Toys R Us on the way to work, and Night Trap is right there alongside the other video games that the kids can buy. I want to show you two examples that deal with advertising. The first is this Toys R Us circular, and if you can see it, I think you'll see, Mr. White, in that case, that the ratings on Mortal Kombat are not visible. They've been covered over. Now, I know that's not your ad. You don't know on Toys R Us, but I'm just trying to make the point.
Did you actually use the Sega version because it says Justifier on it?
Rely on your rating system to follow that through the chain. Second, we've got this ad for Lethal Enforcer that Senator Cole has
Lethal
pointed to
Enforcer,
before.
not enforcers.
And the rating, which is on your package, is effectively it's not visible. The carton is raised in such a way that it's covered it up. And of course, apart from that, and you'd have to look for it, I mean, one other exercise of responsibility here would have been simply to have had a mark somewhere else there saying this is MA17. This shouldn't be bought or used by anyone under the age of 17. So my question is this. Pursuant to your commitment to have a rating system, would you commit now to do everything in your power to ensure that the ratings are not only visible on your product, but visible in advertising for your product, especially advertising, of course, which you procure directly? Mr. White and Mr.
Yes,
Lincoln.
Chairman Lieberman, I refer to my written testimony that we are, in fact, suggesting that consistency as to the presentation of ratings and product packaging, advertising, and promotional materials, and I'll go beyond that and suggest that it should be prominent, and you have our commitment. I don't believe that that same commitment has been made by Nintendo.
Oh!
Well, I don't know what he's talking about there. As you well know, we have made a commitment to the rating system. The point that I've been making all along, and the point that I made to both of you this morning individually, was that we are concerned that a rating system by itself might just be an open season on more violent games. The commitment that I'll make to you is that we will, while we will participate in formulating a rating system, we'll be the first ones back here if what we see is nothing more than just business as usual. If we're going to have a rating system, let's put some meat in it.
Nintendo, you're full of
shit. Get the retailers to enforce it. Let's figure out a way that that the consumer can clearly understand the content of these games, and we'll certainly make that commitment. I've made that to you prior to the hearing in my statement, and I'll repeat it now.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenthal, on behalf of the Software Publishers Association, am I correct that Konami would be a member of the association?
Excuse me, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Mr. Senator.
It's okay.
I do not believe that company is a member.
Would you consider it a software publisher, whether it's a member or not?
I'm truthfully not familiar with that.
Let me, notwithstanding that, let me just get to ask you whether, on behalf of your association, you would commit.
Yeah, I'd say he's long gone because Reggie was
to do everything
head of sales and marketing, and now he's president.
Prominently display the ratings and advertising your members may procure and promotional materials that you put out.
Absolutely, Senator Lieberman, you've made some very, very cogent points here. And what I want to emphasize today is the sincerity of the industry. They have heard what you and Senator Cole have had to say, and they are sincerely interested in the well-being of children. And any system, rating system that does get adopted will be consistent and will be understandable and will be labeled in a similar manner and will be enforceable. That's a commitment that we can make to you.
Okay, Ms. Weiner, in terms of the video rental stores as we know them, right now it's clear that if you go into a store, most of the stores, certainly the big Blockbuster, for instance, if you're under 17, as you said, your age is basically checked, and you can't take out an R-rated unless you got parental permission, and you can't take NC-17 under any circumstances. On the other hand, and I know there hasn't, I guess, been a widely accepted system, one of the staff went into Blockbuster, one of the Blockbusters around here last week, took out Mortal Kombat, and it had no rating on it, and it appeared that it would be easy for a child to take it out as well. I just wanted to ask whether it would be the intention of your members, once a rating system is adopted by the industry, to implement it in the same way you have the movie rating system.
Absolutely. We plan to implement the pledge to parents again, to add the video games to this system, and that's back to our conference. That's
what he's not telling you
really
is that
Mortal
Kombat doesn't have the blood unless you put the code in.
There is a rating system in effect. We want you to add that to the pledge to parents.
Every kid used the code though, so I guess that's not really a good argument.
And explain to your membership about the new system. And basically what most of us do is in our computers we have the parents sign if they do have children. What are the ages of their children? And
that's interesting you say that, because mine doesn't.
Rent any video games.
Unless it was a sticker that came off.
We have all intentions of implementing the system to the best of our ability.
Mr. Johnson, you probably got the hardest job of all in your arcades and other facilities, but what if there is a rating system on the video games? Are your members in a position to start to try to exercise some influence on what, for instance, if a 10-year-old goes up and starts to play Mortal Kombat or Night Trap, can you do anything to stop him from doing that?
Again, one more time, first of all, Night Trap isn't out in coin-off, so that's not an issue. A Mortal Kombat, in answer to that question, absolutely no way. The coin-op is spread literally every small town in the United States. The vast majority of locations, while you're familiar and focusing on the major game
I love
rooms,
the arcade
that
guy.
room that is housed and has an attendant. Remember that there are movie theaters and grocery stores and restaurants,
Exactly.
Nightclubs,
You
and
can't
virtually
police
every
it.
type of
You
location,
can't. It's
retail outlet
impossible.
you can think of that today houses video games. And
They
in most
tried
of
in
those
Australia.
cases,
They put
are
curtains
not
around it. That
immediate
didn't
supervision.
work.
And under those scenarios, as an example, if you were to rate Mortal Kombat and say it is absolutely not to be played by anyone under the age of 17, in the commercial arena, we have no way of enforcing that.
Exactly.
Short of simply not placing the
It's an
game.
arcade game.
In some cases, you're doing that in response. Your members are doing it
And
in
that's what
response
we're
to
saying
federal
from the
pressure.
coin-op side. The market pressure is causing that. Let's face it. We can sit here all day and talk about morals,
Market
but the
pressure.
reality is
He's
the
lying.
out there in
He's
in many
lying
cases
about
is
the
driven by
market pressure.
economics.
I don't
Economically,
believe that
our
for a
people
second.
being forced to pull them.
Final question for Mr. White and the panel. In your
Like, I like
guidelines,
Craig,
you
but
say
he's
that you're
lying
not
about
gonna,
market pressure.
approve products which contain
He's just
material that
worried
denigrates any ethnic,
that they're
racial,
gonna,
sexual,
like,
or
ban the
religious
game
group.
and they're gonna lose all
Obviously,
that
I
money.
think that Night Trap denigrates a sexual group, namely women. But and we've talked about that. But in this, again, this is not your ad. In the Konami ad, there's a reference to ninjas. It talks about fighting ninjas in Chinatown. Aside from being, as I understand it, culturally inaccurate, since ninjas are in the origin Japanese and not Chinese.
Hey, Sub-Zero,
Do you agree
Chinese
that
ninja.
that's,
Clearly you don't know
in
Mortal
spirit of
Kombat,
your own
Lieberman.
guidelines?
And Senator, those guidelines refer to the games, not to the advertising. We don't currently extend.
No, I understand that.
That's not our advertisement.
So would you say that if your advertisers at Sega asked you about including that kind of phrase in a Sega ad, that you'd tell them not to do it?
I'm sorry, I don't know which phrase you're referring to.
Well, there's a reference there to fighting ninjas in Chinatown.
He's like, what the fuck
To
are
me,
you
it seems
talking
like
about?
An ethnically, minimum ethnically insensitive and maybe
We'd strongly discourage that kind of language. Absolutely.
Okay. Senator Cole and I are very serious about this and intend to stay with it. And I must say that I think we're going to pursue our legislation. I hope that you're able to
Fighting ninjas in
come up with a rating
Chinatown.
system that meets everyone's concerns. But I think the best
I should get that
guarantee of is
put on a
stick with
t-shirt.
what the
Fighting
Cosby
ninjas in
said.
Chinatown.
And
And
as
his
part of
face.
we are going to convene again here, preferably in February, to meet again
God.
with you and see what progress you've made up until that time in your rating system. And we can
Fuck, that's
decide
funny.
where to go from there. And again, I know there's a tremendous market incentive here. The money's got to be very attractive, but the best thing you can do, not only for this country, but for yourselves, is to self-regulate. And believe me, it's not only going to be important to our kids, it's going to be important to the ultimate credibility and success of your business. And frankly, in some measure, it's going to be important to the maintenance of constitutional freedoms in our country, because unless people self-regulate, unless people draw some lines, the sense that too many people in our country have that we're
that
out of
shit, so would I.
control is going to
I
lead
would
to
for sure.
genuine threats
Fighting
to our
ninjas in
freedom, which
Chinatown.
nobody wants to see. So we've come some ways. I appreciate the ways we've come, but we've got a ways to go yet. And I hope that you will become the leaders in this. Senator Cole and I have a lot of other things we can work on here in the Senate. I hope that you'll take it from here and work it in a way that we don't have to worry about it anymore. Senator Cole?
Yes, thank you. Just final word. Consistent with what Senator Lieberman just said. You know, there is, in America, an awful lot of freedom, and we cherish it, we want it, we deserve it, and we're not going to let it go. And neither is the commercial world, nor should you. But there is that tendency, at least I see it here this morning, but it's not unique, I think, to this particular industry. As you know, there's always that tendency to use the system down to the last inch to maximize profit and stock price and so on. It's human. I mean, I'm not suggesting these are bad people. But that's what happens in our country, because it's so free, and everybody has an opportunity to do almost whatever they want with its certain limitations. And I think this is an example of how we can push it too far and really do great damage to our country. You see it
Fighting
in other
ninjas in
things,
Chinatown.
not related to your own business.
Oh, God.
But I think those of us who are here today see it in this business. And we hope very much that you step back and take into account our common responsibilities as citizens here, and not only as people who are employed to maximize profits. Thank you.
Hearing is adjourned. Thank you all.
Good job, Joe.
Good job, Joe. We showed them. Oh my God. What a joke of a hearing. What a fucking joke of a hearing. It's a classic.
Senators Joseph Lieberman and Herbert Kohl are co-sponsoring a bill that would require video game manufacturers to label their products to reveal their violence and sexual content. Under the bill, if manufacturers
What sexual content?
standards in 1 year,
I'm still
the
waiting.
president would then appoint a 5-member
Show
cabinet
me.
to do it for them.
Where's the
In a moment,
sex?
an update of the program schedule, but first we
I'm
follow the trail of the
confused.
C-SPAN school bus.
Is there a code for sex in MK? Is there a way to fuck your partner in Lethal Enforcers? You fuck the girls in Nitro? No! Where's the sex? Where's the sex? I should send comments to that thing. I should send it there now. I wonder if they're still in that building. I should send comments there. Yeah, in regards to the 1993 hearings, where's the sex? Oh, man. Oh, my God. Fighting ninjas in Chinatown. They say it's racist. He even says, oh, I thought ninjas were Japanese. That's racist. You know, it's funny because I think Lethal Enforcers came out later than on Super Nintendo than it did on Sega. And I remember they fucking edited the shit out of Lethal Enforcers on Nintendo. So when you shoot an innocent guy, normally there's a red blood splatter and it says innocent victim and you get the buzzer sound. On the Super Nintendo version, they made the blood splatter green, so it didn't look like a blood splatter. Like, it just looked like that's where they were putting the text, innocent victim, in this green splatter, like, thing. And they changed the name from the second level, which is Chinatown, because it's Chinatown. They changed it to Downtown, because they were worried that people would think it's racist. But then, when you play the Downtown level, guess what? All the guys that jump out they're still Chinese, and they wear those Chinese outfits with the, you know, the little wooden button up things. I don't know what that Chinese people wear. It's like a coat, and it's got like the wooden buttons. They still have all that shit in it, but they just changed the name of the level to Downtown. Like, oh look, we censored that. But I let that's all the shit. It made no sense. Some of the censorship shit was so dumb. Like, so dumb. It's a tiebreaker, I know. You know what? I'm almost tempted to tilt the scales towards Nintendo, because Nintendo, he said he had another go at Sega, but I don't think it was strong enough. So I guess I'll leave it as even. You know what was funny? The Sega guy was so level-headed in all his arguments. Like, he never said anything stupid. Not one thing. He said, we've tried to make a rating system. He said, yes, it needs work. Yes, we want to put the ratings on ads. So Sega were trying, and Nintendo were like, oh, fuck it. We censor, we choose what should be out in the market, so we don't need to be part of a rating system. That makes Nintendo guilty. You know, because, like, as the Lieberman guy had said, a lot of people found violent games on Nintendo anyway, which is true. Lethal Enforcers is still violent, you know. So Sega were doing the right thing from the start by having a rating system, really. You know, and that's funny because Sega wanted to have all the uncensored games, all the uncut games. They never cut games, you know, but they were responsible and had a rating system, or at least started a rating system, you know. So it's funny that the Sega guy used to work for Nintendo. He said he used to work for our company, you know, and I find that funny because they let him go, and he really knew what he was doing. That Howard guy was a dick the whole time. It was just like, you know, we wouldn't let that be on our system, but that he kept stepping around the point of, you know, it kept coming up. Nintendo's not part of these groups to have a rating system. It's like, oh, but we rate our own games, you know. So I think Nintendo is more guilty, honestly. But in terms of the scoreboard there of the mudslinging, I mean, they're both as bad as each other. They both took three big shots at each other. You know, the Sega one was the best, man. I got to give it props. Because the Sega guy, he's like, they have this automatic bazooka. They sell it. And the Nintendo's guy like, oh, I know nothing about this thing or what game it works for. Bullshit. You know? So I reckon I have to give it to Sega. If we're going to decide a winner, I think Sega came at Nintendo. Even though Nintendo had taken like the first two shots for like in the earlier stage of the video, I think when Sega got him back by mentioning the bazooka, I think that was pretty damaging. Like, it didn't make Nintendo look good. Like Nintendo, like, no, we censor all our games, we're innocent. And then Sega guy pulls out, yeah, but they have this bazooka. You know? So I gotta say, I think Sega wrecked Nintendo. They just got over the line. So I gotta say, Sega is the winner. They just. No, I'm not doing a coin flip. I'm telling you. Well, I think Sega's argument about the bazooka, that really hurt Nintendo, because Nintendo for the whole 3 hours was saying, no, we wouldn't let that be on our system, and we rate our games, and no, we've taken steps and this and that. But then they couldn't argue that they have a bazooka on their system, which is a thing that's used to blow shit up. You know, it doesn't make you look good when you're playing the innocent golden boy and then your competition says, yeah, but you have a bazooka on your system. How do you explain that? Oh, you didn't write Justifier on the pistol, but you have a bazooka. I am pro Sega, but I think their argument was stronger. Hey, I grew up with Sega, dude. It's funny that if that guy, see, Nintendo, he could have just said, but Sega have a gun too called the Menacer, and that doesn't sound very good either. But because he doesn't know his shit, or maybe it wasn't out on Sega, I'm not sure. I think it was though. I think Sega's gun was out first. Because I've got the Menacer and it's got some really early shit on it. He could have just said, yeah, Sega's got that too. You know. Theirs has two aiming scopes. But he didn't. So I think Sega won. Now, in terms of Lieberman attacking Night Trap, MK, and Lethal, I was right. He took two pretty big shots at Night Trap. It was clear that he didn't like Night Trap. He took a shot at MK and Lethal Enforcer, saying they're violent, but he clearly hated Night Trap. So Night Trap is considered like the biggest bad boy of the 90s. You know, but it's funny because he went on a lot about Lethal Enforcers. I'm almost tempted to give Lethal Enforcers another point because he kept mentioning the gun. He kept saying that this gun, you know, is very realistic and we're putting guns in the hands of children and it's a fucking bright blue gun. That, like, just because it's the shape of a real gun doesn't mean I then want to go out there and shoot people. You know, and even if you got the other gun was bright pink. That was the other color. There was never a black gun or a silver gun. You either had blue or pink. And that was to match the arcades too. The arcades had the same, you know, and it was to show that it's just a game. It's not a real gun. And they weren't going for that realism. They were going for the fun aspect. You know, bright coloured gun looks more fun. And Nintendo, they followed that because they made, well, they ended up changing it actually. But their original light gun, the Zapper, was grey. But later down the track, they made it orange. They used a fun colour as well, you know, to make it look like that. So it's like I said, I'm tempted to give Lethal Enforcers another point because he kept going on and on and on about the gun. But the gun, it's like, as you get the gun with the game, but he wasn't really picking on the game, and this was more about the content of the games for me, and that's why I didn't give it another point. He was just talking about this as a piece of hardware, you know, and he kept going on and on about it. So that's why I didn't give it the other point. And although he mentioned Mortal Kombat all the time, again, he really didn't talk about it much. He just said, you know, oh, I don't want to see, you know, hearts ripped out and stuff, you know. He never really talked much about the content, and that's probably because he didn't know shit about it. It's just an idiot. You can shoot the dog, exactly. That's violent. What could you do? Everyone wants to shoot that dog team. The Nest gun was grey before they changed it to the orange tip. Yeah, that's right. I just said that. What could you do in the arcade before? Oh, enough. What was a bonus game? Oh yeah, no, I agree, Xenobite. I was never against there being a rating system. I just found the circumstances of the hearing hilarious. Like, just the shit they were saying. Like, the games are racist because you can fight ninjas, and the games have sex in them because a girl's wearing a fucking nightie. You know, it's like, and she gets attacked. It's like, that's definitely a sex thing. You know, because she looks sexy. You know, so I was never against there being a rating system. I think it's good. And even Sega were for it. They started the first rating system. Oh, being able to shoot the dog, right. I think it's good that they made the ESRB, you know. It gives parents some guidelines, and that's how it should be. You're supposed to avoid him and hit the ducks. I've got the Zapper. I've got a few Zapper guns, actually. I think I've got the grey and the orange one. I've got the Master System light gun too. It's called the Phaser. And the Mega Drive gun was called the Justifier. This is the Super Nintendo one. It's the same gun for Lethal Enforcers. But like that guy said, they took the name off. It just says Konami here. And on the back here it just says made in China. You know what? I want to see. I've got the Sega gun in the box here. I want to see if the Sega one says Justifier on it. You have the grey Zapper. Yeah, I've got the grey and the orange. I used to get Zapper guns really cheap, $5 before, you know, back in like 2006. Used to go around second-hand places. All right, so this is the Sega gun. By the way, I got this back in like 2006. I was working at a retro game store, and my boss found these factory sealed Lethal Enforcers, and we both bought one straight away because we love Sega for a start, and I've always loved Lethal Enforcers, and I got this big box, the artwork, you know, which I really like. So I was able to get the big box of it. So here it is, and you can tell it's very, very, very new. This gun's never been used. No, it says it, the Justifier. It says it on the barrel. Okay, so it does say it, the Sega one. I'm going to show you guys. So if you can see there, it says the Justifier on the end there. Yeah, whereas the Nintendo one, yeah, they just took it off. Doesn't say anything on the end. Like that makes a difference. The name of the gun. That doesn't mean shit. It makes me laugh, man. It really does. The shit that they brought up in that hearing. The name of the gun. We're setting a bad example for kids by calling the gun the Justifier. And I love the way that the Lieberman said, the more you use the gun in the game, the more powerful it gets. What? What the fuck are you talking about? You can get different guns in the game. You can get a Magnum, you can get a shotgun, an automatic. But your gun never gets more powerful. You can get different guns. It's getting difficult now. Great. Why you be difficult? The plastic tray doesn't want it. Sit back in there properly. That's frigging annoying. The world's most annoying box. Fuck us. It won't. Just won't go back in. Great. See how it sticks out? Just to piss me off. See that? Ugh. I know what I'll do. I'll make it stick out further than this end. So I can line it up. That's fine. Potentially start. Why won't this go back in? I'm gonna have to fix it later. It just won't go back in. It's being a dick. Ugh. Retro boxes, man. What's this? Watch now, PewDiePie. Oh, he's streaming. I know. It just won't go back in. The plastic tray, it just won't go in. The flap won't go under it. It just keeps pushing the plastic tray back out the other end. It's annoying as fuck. So yeah, that was it. That was the TMK live reaction to the 1993 violent video game hearings. There was a follow-up, but it wasn't as funny as that one, where they just pretty much established the ESRB. But that's it. I do want to say thanks to a certain YouTuber. Hang on a sec. I got the video from his channel. It was just easier. K Huntington. So check out his channel if you like, guys. He uploaded the video, and I was commenting a bit saying this video needs a laugh track, and that's where I talked about doing a live stream and then decided to do it. And yeah, I just got the video from his channel, just easier. Even though it's a public access video, you can get it from some US Senate website or something, Video Archives. But yeah, thanks to him. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me, guys. I'm gonna log off. I'm gonna try and get that back in the box and put all these little props away. I gotta go now because you know, after seeing all that footage, it's time to go shoot some people, I think, with my Justifier, with my blue gun. Because when I play games, I get really aggressive, and I gotta go shoot some people with my gun that doesn't shoot bullets. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the real world.